Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is October 22nd, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everybody.
Bobby, what are you thinking of the week we just had this last week?
It was slow and it was boring.
Kind of slow and boring, but I do think there are some significant things that are looking pretty promising. We just passed that budget in the Senate that's got us on track for some tax reform. We got some good numbers on the economy. I think we have some good things that immigration we're working on at the moment. But yeah, let's get into it. Before we do, though, I just want to say that we are taking donations to help out the show to pay for hosting fees. We have our PayPal link in the description. It's at paypal.me/Trump Republic Radio. Also, we don't know what the midweek show is going to be for the midweek this week, but we will most likely have a guest on next Sunday. So with that said, let's get into the big stuff that's happened this week. And the first thing we want to get into is the whole controversy regarding some phone calls Trump's been making recently.
Yeah, this was in regards to the phone call that Donald Trump made to the Gold Star mother of the soldier that was killed last week in Niger. And this whole controversy started because apparently Florida Representative Frederica Wilson apparently was sitting in or heard the phone call. And she started making all of these claims that Donald Trump was disrespecting the mother, that, he claimed that he said he knew what he signed up for. And that Donald Trump was being insensitive, and apparently he said that he didn't even know the person's name, and apparently, when it first started, that's the only, description of it we had was from this representative, a Democrat representative from Florida. She's in like the Miami area down there.
One, though, is it even legal for her to be listening in on a phone call with the president without disclosing that?
I mean, not necessarily. It's a private phone call, calling a widow saying, I'm sorry for your loss, that sort of stuff. So there's really nothing that says that she can't be in on the phone call. But the fact that, that is a private phone call that's supposed to be between him and the widow or the mother of the person who had died. And so, that phone call, every phone call, keep in mind, going out of the White House is recorded. And Trump even said that. He said that he has proof that what he said was not what she was saying. Now, he hasn't released that call yet. I personally think he should, because this thing is blowing out of control right now. But, as things have gone on, apparently now the mother is saying that what the congresswoman said was true, because Sergeant LaDavid Johnson is the one who, that was his name, who died. And this entire thing, from the very beginning when I heard it, it sounded like complete BS.
Yeah.
It really did. And the more that we've come out, the more that they've heard it. Some other families that have had Trump call them have released phone calls that they've made, and they've said that, Donald Trump was very polite and all that sort of stuff. We've got an article here about that in a second. But, so it's obviously clear that Representative Wilson is trying to use this entire thing to politicize this and, boost her morale, or not really her morale, but boost herself and make Trump look bad.
Yeah.
That's completely clear from anyone who's actually watching this situation right now.
And, one thing that she hasn't commented on is just, this is a matter of inflection. He can say those same words with a tone that is, disrespectful, and he can say the same thing that isn't. We haven't been informed about that, and that's why it is important that we hear these calls. But, we might as well get into some other people that have talked about their, experiences with Trump phone calls. So another individual that was killed in that ambush against Boko Haram in Niger was Staff Sergeant Justin Wright. And his father, Arnold Wright, was talking to CBS News, and he said he spoke with the president for 20 minutes. He said Trump was cordial and listened to him as he talked about his son. Quote, he talked to me about the loss of my son and how he served with honor and dignity, and he just wanted to give me a call to thank me. So, another one of the people that was in the ambush is saying that Trump wasn't disrespectful at all. So I don't really understand why Trump would be so callous towards one individual and not to another,
Yeah, that's precisely accurate. Now, I saw someone posted on Twitter, they posted the full quote that Trump said. Now, this is completely unconfirmed, and if this is true, which I have no reason to believe it isn't, because as we've said, all these other families have come out and said that, Trump's been polite and very respectful.
Also, the brother of that person I just mentioned also said that the father was also very appreciative of the phone call. But go on to what you're saying.
But from what I saw, someone posted this picture on Twitter. They said that the full quote that Trump said to the widow of Sergeant Johnson was, quote, "They know the risk, they know what they signed up for, but they still volunteered to put their lives on the line for fellow Americans. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid." So, if that quote is true, and you look at the full context of what he said absolutely nothing wrong.
The thing everyone's been saying is just like Trump just said, oh, he knew what he signed up for.
As if that's the only thing that he said. And even if you look at that quote, it's completely obviously taken out of context anyways. It's like one sentence out of probably a 5-minute phone call. And if you've looked at the interviews that Representative Wilson has been giving afterwards in this whole thing, she's completely insane. She's like Maxine Waters level tier crazy. I mean, every single picture you see of her, she's wearing those stupid little like cowboy hats. I don't know why anyone would ever vote for this woman. She's obviously dumb as a box of rocks. But, what I saw her, the thing that went completely weird for me is when she gave one interview after this whole thing blew up, and she said, wow, it's amazing that they're giving like so much attention to me. I'm a rock star now. That's almost a direct quote. That is a direct quote. She called herself a rock star.
Yeah.
Because they're focusing so much attention on her.
She's bathing in the media attention.
She is. And she has never gotten this much media attention before in her life. I'd never even heard of her.
Yeah.
And I follow politics and this stuff very,
we have
very
an entire database on representatives, and she hasn't stuck out to me at all.
Not at all. I mean, she comes from like a D plus 35 district, so it's, there's no one that's ever going to be able to unseat her from office.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, if you want to bring up the whole race aspect, yeah, it's true. I think she is an absolute racist. Because the soldier who was killed was black, his family was black, and she's been friends with that family for a long time. And Donald Trump, he calls that family, she's obviously using this to, like we said, boost her own image, stir up racial tensions as well. Because he was the only black soldier in that unit that was killed. And so she's using that as a race angle to try to boost her image in this whole situation as well. My personal opinion.
Yeah. I'm not so sure on that, but it does seem very partisan to me. But another thing that came out this week to kind of aid Donald Trump is a Gold Star widow, Natasha Day Alencar, released the audio of her conversation with Donald Trump back in April to try and defend him. Her husband, Mark R. Day Alencar, was killed in Afghanistan. Trump said, quote, "I am so sorry to hear about the whole situation. What a horrible thing, except that he was an unbelievable hero." And she said, "Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. I really do, sir." So it just seems like not of character for Donald Trump to have, such a negative phone call to one lady, but there's multiple people that say, oh, he's really, humble when he calls us.
Yeah. In every single person I've ever heard, we've talked about this in the show before, that Donald Trump has this like public image of himself that's obviously the way that he is, but every person that's ever had private conversations with him, especially business conversations, has said that he's very polite, he's very listening to people, he understands what people are saying, that sort of stuff. And we've listened to a couple of these different phone calls that different families have released that have had, family members who have died, and he's called them to, offer his, respect and that sort of stuff, his condolences. He's always been very polite in those phone calls. They've always said he's been very polite. So yeah, it is completely out of character for this one phone call, which just happened to be listening in by a representative who hates him, completely hates him, and is using this as an opportunity to boost herself. Yeah. It's completely fabricated, what she was saying. It's clear to anyone who has any bit of a brain listening to this entire story.
Most definitely. But I guess we're just going to see if Donald Trump releases that or not.
He needs to release. If he has it, which he said he does, if he has it, he needs to release it. You know, when it first started, I was like, okay, fine. He's using this as like kind of, say, hey, I have it. You better back off your statement. But they've doubled down, so he needs to double down too. He absolutely needs to.
Yeah. Let's go into the next thing that happened this week.
Yeah,
that, kind of really crazy stuff. Well, I know you know more about this than I do.
Well, in regards to releasing things, so Trump says that he is going to allow the release of the classified files on the John Kennedy assassination. So let's backtrack just a little bit so that we don't get anyone confused. Back in 1992, Congress was under a lot of pressure to release these documents. They passed a law saying that they were going to classify them for 25 years and not release them. And that was signed into law on October 26, 1992. The law stated 25 years from the date of the law signing, they would be released. 25 years later is October 26th of this year. So if anyone is trying to say that Donald Trump is the one releasing these, that is incorrect.
He's just upholding the agreement.
Exactly. Now, the law does allow the president the option to not release them, though. So that's what people were talking about earlier. Trump is under a lot of pressure from the CIA to not release these things. And a lot of people were thinking that he was going to not release these things. But he is upholding the law that was already passed. He's allowing them to be released. And what's interesting about this entire situation is, why do you think the CIA would want to keep that stuff classified? It's been 50 years since the assassination took place. What possible information could still be in those documents that would be like a threat to national security today?
Well, the JFK assassination has always been one of those big conspiracy theory areas. And I think they might not want to sow more doubt amongst the public towards the CIA. But like you said, if they're being so hesitant about it, there must be something in this document they don't want out.
Because let's say it was like, let's say, for instance, that Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy who killed Kennedy, supposedly killed Kennedy, was actually a Soviet spy. Soviet Union collapsed back in 1990 or 1989.
1991.
Sorry, 1991. So that has no relevance today. Let's say he was a Cuban spy. That has no relevance of today. Our relationships with Cuba is completely different than it was then. Let's say it was, done by, like, President Johnson was the one who was behind the whole thing. Johnson's dead. It's been 50 years. Let's say it was, the mob. The mob doesn't have the power it had back then. So there's, from that angle, it doesn't matter anything. So, yeah, the only thing that it could possibly be is it's either got to, in my opinion, it's got to either prove some conspiracies right, or there's information that's going to lead to a whole bunch of new conspiracies that come out, which I'm personally leaning towards the latter there. Because that's one of the things they said that, by releasing these things, it's going to bring about a whole new band of conspiracy theories about this. And, who knows if all the documents actually will get released. Because what I heard, again, this is something I saw on Twitter, was that if there are any people who are still alive that are mentioned in those documents, they're going to keep those secured until they died. But for everything else, it's going to be released. There's like 10,000 classified documents. 95% of them are going to get released on the 26th. So that's what people have said. So, at that point, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist too much. I do think that the government has lied about tons and tons of stuff and has kept information secret from the people. I don't think that's even a controversial statement to make. I do think
conspiracies exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there are things that have been covered up about the JFK assassination. Like, for instance, was there a second shooter in the grassy knoll? Did Lee Harvey Oswald work alone? I know they're talking about how he made like a trip to Mexico City. There's for sure some documents that are classified about his trip that he made to Mexico City before the Kennedy assassination. Was there anyone in the government involved? That sort of stuff. I don't know. It was obvious that stuff was covered up. Point being, that was the event that changed this country forever.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad to see that stuff is being finally released. I'm very curious to actually see what's in them. It's going to take a lot of people a long time to go through every little square inch of those 10,000 plus-ish documents that are being released. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the JFK conspiracies. I've always just believed in how they presented it. So, I mean, if someone presents otherwise, I'd be willing to believe it, but...
Oh, I mean, I've probably watched over a day's worth of conspiracy theory videos on the Kennedy assassination. I mean, have you been to the Dealey Plaza up in Dallas?
I have. I've been there, personally.
Yeah, and I've been there twice, and so, it's close to home for us, because, we've been to there. I'm sure you've probably taken the tour of the 6th floor museum.
I didn't. I only passed where it happened on the street.
Okay, yeah, because if you take the tour, you get to actually go up to the 6th floor, and you can see, like, the window that he shot out of and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to see, because, yeah, let's say that's true, that if they release some information, it's going to be some, like, damning evidence that confirms some conspiracy theory. At this point, who cares? And I know that's kind of a disrespectful thing to say, but, I'm going to use the Hillary Clinton quote. At this point, what difference does it make? It's been 50 years. 99% of the people involved in all that stuff are dead now. Politics has completely changed. The world is completely different. The people that were in power, the, entities that were in power are completely different from back then. It would be like if someone released something about, like, the Lincoln assassination. Okay? That's going to make no relevance right now. All it's going to do is either confirm or deny things that people already know or believe that they know.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to the next thing, though?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's move on to the next story.
Okay, so this week, the FBI has uncovered a Russian bribery plot in regards to the controversial Obama agreement for a nuclear deal with Russia.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that it got released by The Hill.
Which has been known about already, but now the FBI is looking into it.
Yeah, if you've ever read the Peter Schweizer book, Clinton Cash.
Or seen the documentary.
By Dinesh D'Souza. I mean, I have a copy of that book signed by the author, literally in my hand right now. It was actually talked about in that book, how there was that whole Uranium One deal, where the U.S. gave 20% of the uranium that we have to Russia, which, the left always said, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, blah, 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 that's not true. No, that is true. That's exactly what happened. Now we're finding out that the, entities in Moscow and high-level people up in the Russian government were actually giving money to the Clinton Foundation before this happened.
Yeah.
And that this is direct evidence of a pay-for-play deal, which is talked about a lot in the book Clinton Cash. We know that there's been a lot of shady deals with the Clinton Foundation, a lot of pay-for-play scandals going on, but this confirms what people already believed, that high-level entities in the Russian government paid off the State Department in order to get this Uranium One deal through.
Which is, just very funny, because it's always been, the Trump-Russia connection. Everyone's been trying to find some sort of connection between Donald Trump and Russia, when Clinton is the one that has an established connection to Russia.
Right.
She's actually met Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump didn't do that till he was president.
And what's also interesting is there's a quote here from the article I read. They said that rather than bring immediate charges in 2010, however, the Department of Justice continued investigating the matter for nearly 4 more years, essentially leaving the American public and Congress in the dark about Russian nuclear corruption on U.S. soil during a period when the Obama administration made 2 major decisions benefiting Putin's commercial nuclear ambitions. So not only did these documents exist proving this was true, the Department of Justice knew about it pretty much the entire Obama administration and did nothing about it.
Yeah. So some heads better be, rolling after we finish this FBI investigation. Obviously I doubt that will happen, but if there was justice in the world, that would happen.
Well, we'll see where the whole Mueller investigation goes, and even if you want to bring up the Mueller investigation.
That's why they're saying that Trump is not firing him, because he is actually finally pursuing this stuff as terms of, the Clinton-Russia connection.
Which might be true. Or it might be completely made up and something that we just hope is true. Who knows? I mean, personally, I don't know why Trump would keep Mueller along. The only reason I would think that he would keep him along if that wasn't the case would be because it would make him look bad. But when has Trump ever cared about doing things that make him look bad?
Yeah.
Pissing off the left. When has that ever concerned him?
It hasn't.
So, we obviously know that Donald Trump is completely innocent of anything related to Russia. That is completely clear for anyone who pays attention to politics nowadays. But, the whole Mueller investigation, he might be looking into this. I personally hope he does. And if he doesn't, then guess what? Once the Mueller investigation is done, Sessions has something to work off of here. So you can go after the not the Clinton administration, you can go after the Clinton Foundation, people regarding that, and maybe you actually will get able to #lock her up.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next thing that happened this week. This is probably the best thing that's happened this week in terms of our agenda. And that is the Senate voted for a GOP budget this week, and that also means there's a big potential that tax reform's happening.
Yeah, this is probably the, I guess I could say the best news that has come out this week. The Senate voted 51-49 to pass the $4 trillion budget, which does lead way to tax reform. Every single Democrat and Rand Paul voted against it. Now, Rand Paul has, he said that he voted against it because, he's trying to use this whole fiscally conservative platform. I don't want the government to spend this much money, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. However, he has since afterwards said, in terms of tax reform, I am 100% on board with the Trump agenda regarding this. So you've got 52 votes there, unless John McCain and Lindsey Graham cuck on you. You've got at least 50 votes already.
The two people we need to worry about, I think, for this vote is John McCain and Bob Corker. I think Graham will be down for this.
Because Graham, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, it's going into a reconciliation where they're going to hash this out. I think there might be potential for some Democrats to work on it, but I do think it'll come down to partisan lines in the very end. But once we get this voted on through reconciliation and, we can put in the tax reform we want, it will be thrown to the House, and we have, a pretty good majority there. We'll have the votes for it. There's been a lot of doubt the last couple of weeks. We haven't seen an official GOP plan. We've just had, the outline from the Trump administration. But finally, we're going to get to see what they're planning to do. And, I mean, we've talked about the tax plan for quite a while. There's a lot of really good provisions in it. I know the GOP establishment has been talking about how they want to simplify it down to where you can do your taxes on a postcard.
They've been saying that since the 80s.
Yeah, I hope they do it. But, this is some really good stuff. I hope they get it done. Now, I'll say this. If they don't get it done, there's going to be some head rollings come, March, April, with some primaries coming.
Yep.
Which, in a sense, makes me wish this wouldn't happen because you'll see a political explosion if that happens. But, yeah, I want to see tax reform done because we need to do this to help the economy. Otherwise, if we don't do it, the market's going to go down pretty bad.
Precisely. And, obviously you and me, we completely believe that, immigration is the most important thing that Trump ran on. It's the most important thing of the MAGA agenda. But, economics and tax reform, it was a part of that agenda too. So you can't ignore this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And, with the failure of healthcare, Trump needs a legislative victory. And tax reform is something that we've talked about in the show that, we've been saying all along, at least I have, that I do believe that something's going to get done from tax reform. And all things are pointing in that direction right now, especially with the passage here of this Senate GOP budget plan.
Which we need to mention with this budget plan. This is the highest deficit they've had since the Obama stimulus. It's going to be a deficit of $666 billion, which is very significant. Up to this point, Donald Trump hasn't been running a deficit, but we passed this budget, we will. But, the Democrats had no problem, racking up the debt under Obama, and all of a sudden they want to pretend like they're fiscal conservatives because, Trump wants to do some stuff. So I kind of don't care at this point, really.
Yeah, that's also true. And also the Senate passed a $36.5 billion hurricane relief bill that they're sending to Trump's desk. That's going to be signed this week. So, at least there's money also there for hurricane relief in case anyone is wondering about that.
Which you got to do.
Yeah, you got to do. There's no way you can say no to that. But, I mean, this kind of just goes back to what we've been saying a long time for about tax reform that, at least it looks like the Senate's kind of getting on board with this stuff. I do think you'll see at least a couple of Democrat crossover votes, especially some of those people that we've been talked about.
People like Joe Donnelly or Heidi Heitkamp. I know Joe Manchin says he's willing to work on this. There's some people that are willing to vote for this.
Yeah, there's at least a couple of Democrats in the Senate that are willing to, whether or not they're going to vote for it in the end, that remains to be seen. But at least, work with the Republicans to try to get something done. Because otherwise, they're going to lose their reelection, and that's the last thing they want to have happen. So, yeah, things are looking good for in that regard. And, it's funny when you talked about the deficit. We got deficit numbers this week. The U.S. in 2017 for fiscal year ran a $666 billion deficit. So that's, your lucky numbers right there if you're a lottery player.
But yeah, I'm feeling very optimistic about this. I know the goal is to get this done before next year so we can backdate the taxes and really, boost this right from the get-go of 2018.
Yeah.
I've seen hopes back and forth on it, but yeah, we're, in the last week of October, and we're really moving on this stuff. I think this is going to get done.
Yeah, I think so, especially since there's going to be some elections here in early November. Not really nationwide elections, but just like, state, local type stuff is all across the country. So whether or not people are waiting for that to happen to see what happens there, doesn't really matter personally, but, we'll see where things go.
And I think I also want to bring up, while we're talking about tax reform, just some rhetoric that I've been hearing so much that I think we need to really talk about. Like, the one thing that the Democrats over and over and over have been saying is the only people that are getting, tax cuts from this bill is the rich. And that is just false. We've talked about what are the rates that they've proposed. There's going to be massive cuts for the middle class as well. But when we talk about, taxing the rich, we have to keep in mind they pay the vast majority of taxes. We were talking about this on Friday when we were talking about paleoconservatism, which I recommend you go back and listen to that. But, I just think people are just so misinformed. We were watching a video this week where they go to colleges and they talk to people and they say, what do you think of the Trump tax reform plan? There's like, oh, it's terrible. It's just tax cuts for the rich, all this different stuff. And what they did is they took the actual provisions of the Trump tax reform plan, and they said that Bernie Sanders proposed this. And they talked about the tax breaks for people for child care. And what were some of the...
It was also tax cuts for small businesses.
Yeah.
Lowering the tax rate for them and a couple other things.
And everyone supported this. So, yeah, it's very partisan. People aren't informed on this. And I just think people are dumb about how they talk about this. Over and over I've been hearing trickle-down economics don't work and whatnot. It's just economics. Okay? People aren't becoming employed by people that are poor. 48% of this country, almost 50 at this point, don't even pay federal income taxes. So, there's just some fake narratives on that really bug me. Anything else on tax you want to talk about, or should we move on?
I just want to say one last thing here about tax reform, and that's that, the Trump administration said the priority is the middle class. So, it's yet to be seen whether or not rates will go up or down for, rich people. They're probably going to all go down, but the priority is the middle class. That's what they're focusing on. So, keep that in mind as things go forward.
With how loopholes go for the rich that we're cutting, they might not even really get a tax cut.
The rich might actually have their taxes raised.
Yeah.
And if that actually is the case, then there's no reason for Democrats to vote against this at all.
Yeah.
Because that's their main narrative is, you're cutting taxes for the rich, they should be paying more. If the rich do pay more, no Democrat should vote against this at all. Because that completely destroys their narrative. Otherwise, they'll look like an idiot.
Let's move on to the next thing that we have here, though, which is something you got, and that is Melania is cutting back on the bloated First Lady payroll from Michelle Obama, when she was in the White House. Yeah,
they said that when during Obama's first year in office, there were 16 people who worked for Michelle Obama, and they earned a combined $1.24 million. Well, they released the numbers for this year. They said that there are only 4 people who work for Melania Trump, and their salaries only total $486,000. So we got, 12 less people working, saving about $800,000 in salaries for the staff for her. So it's just a quick little thing they wanted to say. But they said that even if you take additional staffers that are not listed in the report, Michelle Obama had 24 working for her. Melania Trump only has 9. So, it's a quick little thing we wanted to add in here to the show today, but just it shows you that even though, we're spending a lot of money at the federal level under the Trump administration so far, there are still areas where we're making drastic cuts, and this is one of them. And whether or not this is intentional or unintentional, it's still something worth mentioning.
Yeah. I don't have anything to say on it. Let's go into the next thing, which is also an attempt to save some money. And that is Jim Mattis this week has called for the closure of some military bases, which is a thing also talking about the paleoconservative episode we did for the midweek mini podcast. This is something I strongly believe in and what paleoconservatives also believe in, which I guess I call myself. So Jim Mattis has called on Congress to cut an estimated 19% of U.S. military properties worldwide. Quote, since the last BRAC, which stands for Base Realignment and Closure, which is the process of the federal government to close and consolidate military bases, we have developed new methods of warfare and technologies and expanded needs for warfighters training that require us to assess the military value and effectiveness of our domestic military infrastructure. In addition, every unnecessary facility we maintain requires us to cut capabilities elsewhere. I must be able to eliminate excess infrastructure in order to shift resources to readiness and modernization. This also comes off the heels of a Pentagon report detailing an excess infrastructure capacity of 29% in the Army and 28% in the Air Force. The Pentagon for years has been asking for the BRAC round, as of the 5 past previous rounds resulted in $1 billion of annual savings for the Department of Defense.
So that's pretty good news. They're mostly talking about foreign bases, not necessarily domestic bases.
Yeah.
In case someone was wondering there. So that's got, I'm completely in support of that. We have way too many bases around the world. We have like 700 bases.
Oh, it's around 800.
Yeah, 800 bases.
In 70 different countries.
So even if you look at that Pentagon report that they were talking about the excess infrastructure capacity, 29% in the Army, 28% in the Air Force. That literally says you could cut like 29% of Army bases around the world, 28% of stuff in Air Force bases around the world, and you wouldn't be losing any effectiveness there.
And like Mattis says, like having all these bases spreads us thin, so places that do need more infrastructure spending aren't getting it because we have to spend it on other bases.
Right, so I'm fully in support of that.
Yeah. Another thing as far as foreign bases go that I think is important to state is oftentimes when we have these bases in these countries, it builds resentments against us.
Right.
We've seen this in the Philippines. We've seen this in Okinawa. We've seen this in Iraq. It makes the populace feel like they're under foreign occupation. So closing a lot of bases abroad will improve our foreign relations with the people in these nations.
That's true. And we went into a lot of detail about that on our Paleo-Conservative midweek episode from Friday. So as Zenzo was saying, if you haven't listened to that, we do suggest you go back and listen to that because it was very, very informative.
Yeah, we really went hardcore in depth. I didn't think it was going to be nearly 2 hours, but it ended up being that way. We're also looking, we were just talking before the episode, we're looking to continue doing some shows on political theories. We're looking to do some on libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism, Marxism, maybe even anarcho-syndicalism, I don't know. But yeah, if you want to learn some stuff about politics, we're going to be doing that pretty soon here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing those. So I guess we can move on to the next story.
Yeah, let's get into the last big thing that we have for the top of the national news, and that is the Trump administration is defining life as beginning at conception. The Trump administration has released a strategic plan for the years 2018 to 2022 that asserts clearly at several points that life begins at conception. This is documented located on the website of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I'll go over some of the quotes from the document that suggests it. Quote, HHS accomplishes its mission through programs and initiatives that cover a wide spectrum of activities, serving and protecting Americans at every stage of life, beginning at conception. In contrast, the Obama administration's document read as the following: HHS accomplishes this mission through programs and initiatives that cover a wide spectrum of activities, serving Americans at every stage of life. So, yeah, I could go into the other, things that it says, but it pretty much says the same thing. The Trump administration's viewing life as beginning at conception, which I'm not pro-life. I don't know what your belief on it is, but I know it's going to satisfy his base, so it's pretty good stuff there.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing. I mean, for the most part, I'm pretty much pro-life. But yeah, the Trump base is, by and large, extremely pro-life. At least, even if they're not necessarily pro-life, they do tend to favor the life begins at conception. I'm not even going to say argument. I'll just say a theory or belief. Probably be a better word there. So, yeah, it satisfies the base and not really legislatively doing anything differently. It's just,
their perception of
their
things.
perception of how they view the world and what decisions they make regarding that have yet to be seen. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, this is just a single document located on the HHS website. If I wouldn't have heard about this because of you told me it, I never would have even known.
Yeah.
I think most people don't even know about this. So it's one of those things that's like, whatever. But, if you're on that side, which I personally am, it's nice to see it.
Which, I guess it says that he stayed true to his belief that life begins at conception. He was pro-life during the campaign. I know a lot of people doubted that, and he had, say, a recent conversion to that viewpoint. But it says that he hasn't, betrayed it. And I don't know, if you're pro-life, this is good stuff.
Yeah, if you're pro-life, then even if you don't really like Trump, you should at least be happy about that.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Let's move on to the economy. We got some brief things that we have here that you're going to get into.
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. The first thing that we have is a report that is out from the Philadelphia's Fed's Manufacturing Survey showing that employment is at a 48-year record high. They said the Philadelphia Fed's Manufacturing Business Outlook Survey came in at 27.9 in October, crushing the forecast, calling for 20.2, so a full 7.7 points higher. They said the regional factory survey's current indicators for general activity, new orders, shipments, and employment all remained positive this month. They said employment gaining 24 points to come in at 30.6 is the highest level ever recorded in the 48 years that the Philadelphia Federal Reserve has conducted this survey. They said nearly 31% of the firms reported higher employment this month, juxtaposed to 18% in September. No firms reported decreases in employment for October. They said the average workweek index also increased 8 points, which is the highest reading in 4 months. So, yeah, employment's at a 48-year high.
Donald Trump says he was going to be the job president, and it's not all due to him. But, yeah, it has done much better under his administration than Barack Obama, so he's fulfilling on that aspect.
Yeah, not only that, they also have a 6-month outlook. Now, remember, as we've said before, the stock market tends to look about 6 months forward. There's a reason why it's going up. They also said here that the 6-month outlook also remains very strong, as the percentage of firms expecting an increase in activity, 53%, remains significantly higher than the percentage expecting a decrease, only 7%. So 53 to 7, do you think we're going to increase or do you think we're going to decrease? Very good news.
Majority believe, very few people don't think so. Do you want to go into the next thing that also ties into it?
Yeah, we do. So this is very, very similar. This is reported by Bloomberg that we are at the fewest jobless claims since 1973. And
that's the year my mom was born.
Yeah. And this is even without, the hurricanes. Or I should say, even with the hurricanes.
Even with.
Yeah. They said jobless claims decreased by 22,000 to 222,000 when the estimate was 240,000, which is the lowest level since 1973. They said the period included Columbus Day holiday, which gave people one less day to file the claims. So I doubt that would have made too much of a difference. They were also saying that the 4-week average of initial claims, which is a less volatile measure than the weekly figure, because, weekly figures can change from week to week depending on whatever happens. So if you look at the 4-week average, it's a better indicator. That also dropped from 248,000 from 257,000. So again, really, really good news. I don't really have anything more to say about that because that's kind of what we've been talking about in the show for the last several months.
From the beginning, pretty much.
We've had numbers like this come out almost every single week. I guess the last thing I'll say is that the only states where things actually did take a slump were Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Michigan. However, Florida and Texas are being blamed on the hurricane because of that. So even then, Georgia, which was also affected by the hurricane, don't forget, Georgia was completely affected by the hurricane as well. The only state that's the outlier there is Michigan. And whatever you want to give as the description for Michigan, I'm all ears. But so that was really, really good.
Yeah, and all I just want to say is we do have an open bias. We support the president, and we've been reporting on this every month, and you think they just want to make this sound good. We're not really trying to do that. We just never really have bad news on the economy. I remember, I think the last time we had anything that sounded bad was the jobs predictions were down last month. That's about it.
And that was also because of the hurricane, too.
Yeah.
But, the last thing that I kind of want to mention here is, if you look at the U.S. unemployment rate, the people that were on the right tended to say that, the way that they conduct that is biased in the way that, what they do is they include people that have stopped looking for work as unemployed, which is why if you look at the labor force participation rate, it's a much better indicator than that. They said that even if you take the numbers that were given from this survey here, if you look at the unemployment rate among people who are eligible for unemployment benefits, which is, much more accurate, that rate fell to 1.3% from 1.4%. So even then, you're seeing that true unemployment is actually going down, not just the biased unemployment rate that they always like to use, which is also at a 4.2% or something like that. It's very, very low, and it's continued to go down for the last couple of years. So, if you look at the actual data within that, even that's looking good as well. So,
which, this also plays into the elections coming up because Donald Trump has been doing very well in the economy. Yeah. Perceptions are about 2/3 of people believe that Donald Trump has improved the economy. The Democrats don't like this. They can't campaign on economic matters when the economy is doing well. So it's going to force them to talk about things that aren't as popular, like their immigration platform, which is, we went over, what was it, last week, the week before, 75% of Americans support Donald Trump on his immigration policies.
Yes.
So, that's one of the ways that strategically we're advantaging ourselves for the not the primaries next year, but the midterms.
Yeah, what you were referencing was 75% of people support the policies rather than him with him with his name on the policies.
Yeah.
If you say what a policy is and then ask, do you support yes or no, without mentioning this is Trump's policy, 75% say yes.
Which plays into how people perceive immigration news. I mean, every single week, and we're about to get into immigration.
Yeah, it's our next segment.
We go very in-depth on immigration. We've been seeing how this has been going since the get-go. Donald Trump has been amazing on immigration. He's done so well. But they don't talk about that in the news, so people just don't know how well he's doing.
Yeah, and I saw someone was commenting one time on a Facebook post where, it was obviously an anti-Trump person, but they were like, name one good thing that Donald Trump has done, and don't say immigration. And my reply was like, why not immigration?
Most people support what he wants to do.
I was going to say, why not immigration? That is that's what he ran on. That's the number one thing he ran on was immigration.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's where he's going to be focused on, and that's where he has been objectively the most successful so far.
Yeah.
So speaking of immigration, you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's go straight into immigration.
All right.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So you got the first thing for immigration here. Want to go into it?
Yeah, so here's some not so good news. The report is out that the U.S. immigration population has hit 60 million people, which, if you do the math, 1 in 5 Americans is an immigrant, whether legal or illegal at this point. Yeah, it's jumped up over the past 16 years from 43 million, where it was in 2000. So
those are crazy numbers. And, we're big advocates for cutting illegal immigration and legal immigration. I think one thing that can be said about having such high numbers of immigrants is it kind of leads to societal cohesion going down, because these people aren't assimilating like they want them to be, which is a lot due to because we've changed up immigration policy since 1965, which we changed it which happened with the Hart-Celler Act. So, you look at how immigration has gone. Historically, there's always been trends of, big expanses of immigration, and then they cut it off for a couple of years so people assimilate. Mm-hmm. Right now, where we stand, we are at the end of a wave of the biggest, influx of immigrants, and, people aren't proposing cuts in immigration. I mean, some people are, like Tom Cotton and David Perdue, but that's definitely not the majority of people.
Yeah, not only that, but they were saying that if you look at the historical data here, as we said, that's 1 in 5. Now, if you look at just legal immigrants alone, it's about 1 in 8. So you can do the math there to see how many illegal immigrants there are in this country.
Which we always doubt the numbers for illegal aliens.
They say it's like 11 or 12. It's probably close to 20 or 30.
They've been saying that since like 2000. Why would it not go up?
Yeah. And anyway, so if you do the math there, so 1 in 5 people in the U.S. right now is an immigrant, whether illegal or legal. If you look at just legal immigrants, it's 1 in 8 in the U.S. And if you look back to 1980, that legal immigrant part was 1 in 16 in America. So that means it has doubled in a share proportionately of people in the United States. That's how many immigrants we've taken into this country since then.
Yeah, some really shocking numbers. I didn't know that it had gotten this bad. Let me pull up the next thing. My computer's being a bit slow. So the next thing that we're going into is some numbers that are also very concerning, and that is the feds have granted nearly 2 million work permits to illegal aliens in 2017. So the government will dole out nearly 2 million work permits this year to immigrants who came, for the most part, to this country illegally or have some tentative status, but have gained a granted foothold in the U.S. thanks to a loose immigration policy, according to statistics released last week from the New York Times. Almost all of these permits are discretionary, meaning the government could deny them if officials choose so. Meanwhile, the country's main technology guest worker program has essentially become a pipeline for Indians to gain a foothold in the U.S. job market, according to the same statistics, which show that people from India fill nearly 75% of all applications this year for H-1B worker visas, the main source for high-skilled guest worker programs. So, definitely not what we want to be seeing.
No, definitely
at
not.
all. These people shouldn't even be allowed to work. That's why they came here in the first place. If we cut them off from these jobs, they're going to go back. But, definitely not good stuff.
No, definitely not good. So I'm hoping that will be fixed for next year, especially if you can get, some people in the 2018 elections, and then by 2019, get some real hard-hitting immigration reform bills in place that do, limit legal immigration as well.
And also these visas, the H-1B visas and the H-2B visas, which something that we mentioned, I believe is about a month back, that was actually very, very promising, is Jeff Sessions was suing the people that give out these H-2B visas, the federal government's actually going against these companies because they're required to see, oh, can we fill these positions with Americans? And they haven't been doing what they need to do. They've just been filling it out like candy. And, in the past, the federal government just let them do this, but now they're actually punishing them. They actually see it as a violation of Americans' civil rights because they're prioritizing foreigners as opposed to American citizens. And this all comes off the back of that executive order that Trump signed near the beginning of his administration, the Buy American, Hire American, which has allowed them to actually look into these matters.
Yeah, in regards to what you were saying about going after businesses that are hiring the illegal immigrants, ICE Director Thomas Homan said that the agency is actually prioritizing workforce informant as a way of reducing the flow of illegal immigrants into the U.S. So, he was saying that, quote, unless you remove the magnets for illegal immigration, as long as they think they can come here and get U.S. citizenship and not get removed, they're going to keep coming. As long as they can come here and get a job, they're going to try and come. So we are stepping up worksite enforcement. They said that they said that the amount of time that ICE is spending on workplace investigations to determine whether or not they want those efforts is increasing by about 4 to 5 times the current rate. So ICE is really starting to step up their employment, enforcement of illegal immigrants.
Yeah,
as well.
Thomas Homan, he's a holdover from the Obama administration, but ever since Donald Trump, got out of the way of him, he's been doing his job, and he's been doing a great job. So last week we talked about California passed that sanctuary state bill, and in response he said, whatever, we don't need your cooperation. We're coming in with ICE, and we're going after workplaces. So, we're done with this idea that illegal aliens can work in this country. It's time to shut that off, because if we do that, they're going to come here, and they're going to go home.
Yeah, speaking of California, in two different things here. For one, as long as they're part of the United States, they need to follow United States federal immigration laws.
Yes.
Unless they want to be a separate country, in which I say go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And this plays into the next thing we're getting into.
This does, exactly. So in regards to California also allowing illegal immigrants to work, there's a report out that they are also allowing them to work in their own state government. They said that a report by the San Jose Mercury News revealed the extent to which DACA beneficiaries have been given opportunities ahead of Americans, with many working as aides and interns on immigration-related issues in San Jose, California. For instance,
that's not a conflict of interest.
No, of course not. For instance, Mario Lopez, an illegal alien in the DACA program, works as an aide and advisor to Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors President Dave Cortese. Lopez advises Cortese on immigration issues, despite technically being in the U.S. illegally. They said that Lopez began the Open Borders organization New Americans Fellowship Program in 2015. It works to give paid county government internships to illegal aliens.
Which is illegal. You can't have foreigners working for the government.
Yeah, but that's exactly what is happening in California.
To me, it almost, I don't want to cut you off, but it sounds Orwellian. The New Americans Initiative being done by non-citizens, being done by people that aren't Americans. You're not an American. You don't get to be a new American. You're here illegally.
They talk about Russia being a country that, is trying to meddle in our democracy. How about the fact that you have millions of people
of Mexican nationals illegally
in this country, but yet legally able to stand there and try to protest American government,
trying to influence our politics.
To try to influence our politics. That is your conflict of interest. That is your subversion of our democracy right there.
Yeah, another aspect as far as, Mexican intrusion in our politics happening here in our home state is, we just try to pass SB 4 to where we can actually, enforce our own immigration laws, and that's been taken to a lawsuit, which, Austin, San Antonio, I believe San Marcos, even our city, is actually getting involved with. But actually, the government in Mexico is saying that they're also joining this lawsuit against the state of Texas. So, Mexico is a lot more influential in our politics than Russia is.
Yeah.
Russia's a boogeyman to, so people don't look at what's actually going on.
Not only that, but to an exponential degree. But the last thing I'll say about the story is just one last part of this article that I wasn't able to read here. They said, in another case, Lucilia Ortiz, a 29-year-old former illegal alien in the DACA program, who has since married a U.S. citizen, which I guess makes her legal now.
Yeah, you can get a green card when you do that.
Yeah. Previously worked for San Jose Councilman Raul Perales and was influential in organizing, quote, citizenship drives for San Jose city employees and their family members. So, like, not only are they doing all these things, you have multiple people who have worked in, and this is just one city in California. All we're talking about here is San Jose.
This happens across the country.
This happens all across the country. And they use that to directly influence their own benefits and their own people's benefits to try to help out other illegal immigrants. They're not trying to help out American citizens. They are specifically getting jobs in government to help other illegal immigrants get benefits in this country to try to gain and control their own power.
It's freaking crazy. But let's go into the next story, also out of California, and that is a story about how they're not sending their best.
They are not sending their best because... And so you've heard about those giant California wildfires that have been going
which
on.
we haven't really talked about because it always happens, but it's been pretty bad lately.
This one has been one of their worst, if not their worst, in history. And it's very sad. You know, I saw some drone footage of just a neighborhood that was completely burned down. Like, all you could see that was left was just smoldering ashes of what houses used to be there. Something like 42 people or so have already died. It's all in the California wine country. But, again, talking about ICE Director Homan, confirmed that a man that was arrested in connection with starting a fire in Sonoma County wine country is an illegal alien from Mexico who has twice been deported back to his home country. Yeah. So the guy who has been arrested in as part of starting that fire, illegal immigrant, not supposed to be here. This entire fire was preventable. But instead, because we allowed these people to be here...
People die.
42 people are dead. Millions of dollars in damage and property damage. People have lost their homes and everything. Why? Because we allow illegal immigrants to be here.
And it's not only California that has to deal with illegal aliens starting fires. This is actually something I learned from Ann Coulter's book, Adios America. I've used this as an argument against liberals, and they don't have any way to beat this. So if you want to destroy some liberals on immigration, listen in very well here. This is a pretty good stat. The majority of wildfires in Arizona are started by illegal aliens.
I believe
you know what they do? They come into this country, and to avoid being arrested, they start fires. So then, instead of, the Border Patrol stopping them, they have to worry about these firefighters. They need to bring in the fire trucks to stop it. And you know what has happened sometimes when they do this? When the firefighters come, they attack them. So, if you're someone worried about the environment or people's safety or anything, stop this illegal immigration.
Especially if you are an environmentalist, you should not be in favor of illegal immigration.
Yeah, and I brought this up in the paleoconservative episode we did. The Sierra Club, which has always been the biggest lobby for environmentalism for decades, always supported stopping illegal immigration and also cutting legal immigration because, having more people in this country affects how pollution,
Right.
It increases when you have more people. But all of a sudden, they just switch this out of nowhere. But, there's historical precedent where people against immigration also are, in favor of environmentalism.
And I will say that I looked the data up. I wasn't able to say it during the podcast that we did last time. But the Sierra Club, as of right now, if you look at their website's policies under immigration, their official policy is we have no official policy on immigration. So they're not pro-immigration anymore, I'll tell you.
They don't want to say it, though, because they'll lose donors that are mainly leftists.
Mm-hmm. If they were, and the thing is, if they were to say we are pro, immigration in all regards, they probably would get more money from the left.
Yes.
But yeah, you're exactly right. So I think personally they are still against immigration. It makes sense. It would be, if you look at their ideological platform, you should be against it if you're an environmentalist. So it would make sense that, for them being in general, I guess I could say left-wing, organization, to not even be saying that about immigration,
Yeah.
they're on the right in that regards.
And you also you got to keep in mind, have you actually seen like photos of the border? These illegal aliens leave trash everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere. Okay, I need people to be clear on this. Recycling is a first world insight. They don't recycle in the third world. They don't recycle in Mexico. They don't recycle in Guatemala. Okay, this is not something they care about. So, yeah, they're destroying the environment out there. And I remember also I read in Adios America, because that they're coming through, they've, like, littered state parks immensely.
Mm-hmm.
They've actually damaged, protected sites out there. So if you care about environmentalism, which most Democrats do, I think it's time to actually take immigration seriously.
Not only that, not only is it illegal immigrants who are leaving trash and, a lot of litter behind, it's also people that are Americans who are trying to help them out.
Yes.
Because a lot of times what people on the U.S. will do is they'll take, like, gallons of water in, like, plastic jugs, and they'll leave it out so that when the illegals get to certain points, they have water there for them.
Yeah.
A lot of times what happens is those things will, they'll leak or they'll spill, and all of a sudden then you have a bunch of plastic jugs in the middle of the desert.
Or they drink it and then throw it away somewhere.
Exactly. So not only is it the illegals who are contributing to this, trash policy, the littering.
It's also liberals.
It's also liberals trying to help them too.
Yeah.
So don't forget that it is a two-way street. They're both complicit in this. It's disgusting, really. And, with that being said about the wildfires, my heart goes out to every single person who's affected by those, because wildfires they're terrible. It's bad. There's a new movie that's hit the theaters this week called Only the Brave. That's about a story about those those firefighters who fought. I forget what state it was in, but a lot of them died when they were out there trying to do that. So firefighters put their lives in danger to try to stop these things, to try to stop fires from destroying people's houses, people's homes, people's property, people's lives. And if you're pro-illegal immigration, knowing what happens because of that, you can't say
You're sick. You don't care about American lives.
Sick. It's entirely sick. And so, like I said, my heart goes out to all the people whose houses have been destroyed, everyone who's been affected by that. The federal government has been sending all the help that they've been able to do, which is good. But, you can't take both sides on that issue. You just can't.
Yeah. Let's go into some 2018 election stuff now. We got some pretty good stuff, I think, this week on it. The first thing that we want to get into is it's on. It's war.
It is war.
Mitch McConnell had a statement on Steve Bannon's statement last week. If you don't remember what Steve Bannon said last week, he says, we're going to cut off the oxygen to Mitch McConnell. He's targeting every single senator in the GOP, which is, other than Ted Cruz, that's up
Senate
for
Republicans.
Senate Republicans that are up for re-election, except for Ted Cruz. So that's 9 different senators. He's also going to be going after congressmen as well, representatives. And he has said it is not enough just to vote, in favor of what Donald Trump puts out. You need to be out there campaigning to get the platform that Donald Trump wants.
Yeah. You want me to read McConnell's quote here?
Yes.
He says, and this is McConnell's quote lashing out at Steve Bannon. He says...
This was during a joint press conference on Monday with Trump.
Yeah, Trump is literally standing right next to him when he said this.
Yeah.
He said, the goal here is to win elections in November. My goal is to keep a Senate majority. The way you do that is not complicated. You have to nominate people who can actually win, because winners make policy and losers go home. We had one skirmish in 2016. We kept the majority in the Senate. So our operating approach will be to support our incumbents and in open seats to seek to nominate people who can actually win. You know who's being hypocritical in that statement there?
Who's being hypocritical?
McConnell himself. Because precisely, look at what he said. We had one skirmish in 2016. We kept the majority in the Senate. And he says, we need to nominate people who can actually win, because winners make policy and losers go home. The reason the Senate is still red is because of Donald Trump.
Yes.
You never would have won a Republican Senate seat in Pennsylvania if Trump would not have won that state.
Yes.
The reason, people said that they're worried about down ballot races because of Trump, thinking that, they might go blue because people don't like him. No, the exact opposite happened. Things flipped red because those people were they were on the same party as Trump. That ship has sailed. What we are now seeing is the war of the ideologies. The MAGA agenda versus the establishment agenda.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's happening here. And the MAGA agenda is winning. We talked about that poll of Republicans saying that 59% of people that voted for Trump see themselves as Trump supporters first and members of the Republican Party second. We've talked about how Mitch McConnell's approval rating is like 18% nationwide right now.
19 in Kentucky.
Yeah, 19 among Kentucky. 18% among Republicans nationwide. Okay? That's less than 1 in 5 Republicans actually think that McConnell's good. Who the hell thinks he is going to win anything? He is the reason you're going to lose if you do lose. It's because people back the establishment. What you are seeing right now is the war that people have known has been coming for a long time. When the, MAGA wing of the Republican Party fights back against the establishment. And, we're seeing the stuff out in, the polling out in Arizona with Kelli Ward and Jeff Flake. She's kicking his ass in those polls.
She has like 50%.
Yeah. She's she's got like a 25, 30-point lead on him. Okay? We haven't had any real new polls come out of Nevada recently, but Danny Tarkanian is running against
Dean Heller.
Dean Heller for the Republican Senate seat there. And Danny Tarkanian had like an 8-point lead. We saw the Roy Moore versus Luther Strange in Alabama. Luther Strange spent $30 million. Roy Moore spent $2 million, and he won.
By 10 points.
He won by 10 points.
And Strange had a Trump endorsement.
Yeah.
He gave him a rally the week before.
Because this is no longer about Trump. It is about that agenda. That is what people voted for. They didn't vote for people because they had an R next to their name.
Yeah.
And that's especially true coming up to these midterms next year. They're not going to vote for someone because they have an R next to their name. Especially in the primary. Well, the primaries, everyone's got an R next to their name. They're going to vote for which one is the pro-Trump, which one is, pro getting the immigration stuff that we talked about, which person is on board with health care, which person is on board with tax cuts, which person is on board with just, not being against Trump every step of the way, and which person is on the side of Mitch McConnell. Because I guarantee you that, the badge of, if a McConnell endorsement as a Republican candidate in the primaries is not going to be a badge of honor.
No.
It's going to be like having bird poop on your face.
Yeah. And, I obviously read like a million articles a week, so I really pick up on how like narratives are being crafted. And I'm getting really sick of this like narrative that the leftists are pushing, like, oh, Steve Bannon is actually going to hurt like the chances of the GOP to win in the midterms. Okay, if we send in these establishment guys, that's going to kill us. And, we're going to very soon here get into some polling out of Alabama that's complete bullshit. The pollsters are trying to gaslight you the same way they did with Donald Trump. These aren't the true numbers, and they're trying to get you to not vote for the people that are actually going to help Donald Trump. And, we've talked about the Senate. We have a really good picture of how the Senate's going. We're going to be winning big league. And we can even win more big league if we get some actually good guys for Trump. We're Corker's left. We're probably going to get Marsha Blackburn. Good person to have in there. Kelli Ward is going to win her seat. And also, I've been seeing people say, like, oh, she doesn't have a chance to beat the Democrat there. Pretty big bullshit. You get Tarkanian. You get rid of Dabenow out of Michigan with Kid Rock, which I think can happen. You can remove Manchin. You can get rid of Joe Donnelly. You can get rid of Heidi Heitkamp.
What's the guy in Wyoming?
Oh, I forget his name. We always forget him.
It's the senator from Wyoming. He's got a very rich.
We could probably get rid of Sheldon Brown in Ohio. Yeah, we're going to not only keep the Senate majority. That's easy. Yeah. Which McConnell's like saying, "Oh, we need to keep it." It's not a contest.
There's no way you're going to lose it.
We're getting a lot of seats, okay?
We're going to gain about 4 to 5 seats in the Senate.
From the Democrats.
Yeah, from the Democrats. And replace some of our own cucky guys with our own guys.
Already, we've gotten Luther Strange out of the picture. Which, one of the things you have to worry about is we primary these guys. Luther Strange still in the Senate. They're going to cuck their way out. Yeah. But, I don't know. It's something we need to bleed out a little bit before we can fix it.
November, December, January. That's 3 plus 12. 15 months. We still have 15 months left of Bob Corker. Okay? Think about that.
Ooh, yeah, he's looking really bad at the moment. He's complete garbage.
Yeah, and he can do a lot of damage in 15 months. And John McCain, he might have only 15 months to live.
Yeah.
And he's hopefully less. And he's going to do a lot of damage in that time. And that's the bad thing about these guys is, this war is starting now, but it's going to get a lot worse before things get better.
Because they don't want the party to change, but we're going to have to force them to change. Okay,
and we are forcing them to change.
Politics is changing radically now. It's time for them to accept this, which we're going to get into some more of that when we talk about some of the globalist speeches this week. But let's go into the next thing that we have here.
Yeah, so the next thing kind of exactly had to do with what we were talking about in regards to Kelli Ward. But Steve Bannon has actually gone out and he's endorsed her and he's held a rally for her out in Arizona. So, people were wondering about whether or not Steve Bannon was going to endorse Kelli Ward or someone else. Well, he's on board with her right now. And they had a crowd of people at the Scottsdale Hilton. They gave a couple of different speeches. There were some live streams. I watched some videos. So... yeah, there you go. So, I just wanted to mention that in regards to things that we've mentioned in shows past. So, do you have anything to say about that?
Not really.
Okay.
Let's go into the next thing, which is some pretty good polling out of Virginia. So, the Virginia governor race is going on right now. They have 3 weeks until they vote for it. There's 2 governor seats up in 2017. I forget what the other one is. But, right now, Ed Gillespie, who's the Republican, is going up against Virginia's Democrat Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam for the seat. And currently, Ed Gillespie is up 48 to 47. Now, that's within a 4.9% margin of error, so obviously maybe he's ahead. Maybe Gillespie's up even more so than we know. But that's been a 6-point swing in the last month. And a lot of this has to do with some attack ads Gillespie's been attacking Northam on as far as immigration and crime, and also going after him around removing Confederate statues, which, I think all of those 3 platforms are winning platforms, the GOP.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just stuff that people want in general. In particularly, they're painting how Northam is soft on crime and related to MS-13, which has been doing really well. So
I was going to say, Virginia is one of the states that has a lot of MS-13 crime compared to the rest of the country, too.
Yeah, they actually have a pretty high amount of illegal aliens, which, it's pretty far from the border. Mm-hmm. But, Virginia is a really hard state for us to win, the way, things have been changing there. So, it'd be pretty good if we get the governor seat there. I really wish Corey Stewart would have beaten Gillespie, but... I'd rather have Gillespie win than nothing.
Oh, obviously. And, in 2016, I always had us losing Virginia, and we did. And in my 2020 models that I've already been working on, I'm not even putting that as a swing state. I've just got it blue.
Yeah.
But if somehow our guy here is able to actually win this Virginia governor race, I might start to slightly rethink that. But, I hate to be the one who's being the bearer of bad news here, but... I think that the Democrats going to win this race. I don't think the Republicans going to win it.
Yeah. It'll be close, and, we'll find out in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, we'll have some interesting stuff to say as this gets closer. We'll continue to go over the pollings as we approach that deadline. But let's go into the other polling, which I know you have a bit to say about this.
Oh, yes. So this is what we're mentioning about Alabama. So in the Roy Moore versus the Democrat who's running, which I guess who's running?
Doug Jones, I believe.
Yeah, Doug Jones. There was a poll that was released by the, keep in mind this is hilarious here, the Democratic polling firm Anderson Robbins Research and Republican polling firm Shaw and Company Research by landline and cell phone interviews shows that the race is tied at 42% each. That is laughably off, because earlier polling shows it not being close, okay? 2 days after the Moore Luther Strange Republican runoff, they showed that Roy Moore was up by 6 points, okay? Another poll a couple days later showed that Roy Moore was up by 8 points. And here's the thing that's also strange about this poll. They've got Donald Trump's approval rating in that state at 45%. In Alabama, Donald Trump's approval rating at 45%. No, his approval rating in that state is probably in the low 60s.
Yeah, maybe
low
like
to mid
65.
60s. Yes, 60 to 65, somewhere in that range. Okay? So already you're showing that this thing is way, way off. You know, if you look at the partisan breakdown of this thing, they've got Democrats way, way higher than what they actually are.
It's like sampled even with Republicans.
Yeah, it's almost even with Republicans, like R+1, R+2. That's like an R+10. That's like, no, that's not even R+10.
The state's like R+10.
It's like R+15, actually. Jesus. Alabama is. You know, we're talking about, like, you know, obviously we know that these special elections are being closer in terms of margin of victory than they should be. So even if a Republican candidate might normally win by like 20, 25 points, you might win by like 12 to 15 instead. That's what I mean by closer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Democrats are doing any better than they are. But that being said, this poll is laughably incorrect. And I literally described that here in our article thing that we have here. It's laughably incorrect. No Republican is going to lose in Alabama right now.
No.
No way, no how.
All their representatives, I believe, are Republicans in that state.
They have a Democrat.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think back what we have in the database. Yeah, I could one representative.
Yeah, they have one Democrat representative, but
both their senators are Republicans, though.
Yeah, because it's a very, very Republican state, and they also said that 2% of Roy. I'm sorry. Yeah, talking about you said Jones was the other person, I believe.
Doug Jones.
They said that if you look at the internals of this poll here, they said that some of Jones's support comes from anti-Moore sentiment, while very little of Moore's support comes from anti-Jones sentiment. So if you think about that, people who hate Roy Moore would tend to support Doug Jones, but not the other way around. People who hate Doug Jones aren't really supporting Roy Moore, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because if you're a Luther Strange person who hates Roy Moore, you'd go for Doug Jones.
Now, we're seeing polling before they had that election that the majority of Luther Strange voters would vote for Roy Moore if he won.
Yeah.
And Trump has said also he's going to down to Alabama. He's going to campaign for Roy Moore too. So this poll's bullshit. He's going to win pretty handily.
And whoever was the person who actually released these polls, I guess Fox News was the ones who actually commissioned the poll, even though the other ones were the one who actually ran the poll. So as much as I tend to like Fox News, they're going to look really, really stupid here in a couple of weeks.
But yeah, this is an example of how they're trying to gaslight you with polls. And they're going to do this all the way through the primaries and through the midterms because they want to scare you and they want you to think that you don't have a chance. They want to make you depressed. They're the ones that should be feeling depressed. And, we're going to get into some numbers up next on how money's going. Things are looking good for us.
Well, not only that, but in regards to the gaslighting polls that they are going to release, we've got our database of every state and every single freaking House district, okay? And especially the Senate seats there. We're going to be talking about polls a lot on this show going forward in the midterms, both in the primaries and in the actual election itself next November. And we're going to be able to tell you guys whether or not polls that are released, especially if they're very controversial type polls, we're going to be dissecting these things very, very accurately, looking at internal polling numbers, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience going through these polls, more so than I do.
2016, I almost obsessively looked over that stuff. Every single poll, looking at, what was the sample size, who was polled, blah, 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 all that different sort of stuff. Comparing that to what actual data is. And we've also got, we haven't mentioned this on the show, and I'm not going to read it off here, but we've got updated party registration numbers. All this is pointing to things are looking great for us. As you just said, we're going to talk about here in just a second with the fundraising numbers. But, if we talk about, the party breakdown of different states and different House districts and stuff, we'll be able to tell you whether or not polls are accurate. And we can even use that to determine whether or not what the actual numbers would be if you look at internal numbers.
Yeah,
too.
And we'll be making midweek mini podcasts just over these primaries and just over the midterms. So if you don't know how to vote, we'll tell you how you want to vote. and we'll get you extremely informed on the stuff need be. We're looking to maybe get this stuff out on different platforms so just people know.
Yeah, and not only that, but I know that we've mentioned this before, but our goal is to do every single House district, all 435 plus.
Which we have an extensive database that already says all of them.
Every single governor race, not the ones that are happening this year, but the ones for next year.
Yeah.
And every single Senate race, we're going to give you all the breakdowns, information, that stuff. It's going to take multiple midweeks, or I don't think we're going to do midweeks. We're going to add just another extra show.
Yeah, we might actually just do an extra show.
Which, so if you're a person who's really interested in that sort of stuff, definitely listen in. Obviously you'll be able to see like the titles and descriptions of those that tell you what states
and spread
are being
the information
covered.
on it. Let other people know. Recommend the show to them for that.
Definitely.
If only that. When I was creating the Senate database, I spent 5 hours alone on that. We do take this stuff extremely seriously.
Yeah. So, with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into this last part of let's just go ahead and get into these numbers that we got here. So.
Okay. So the last thing that we're getting into for the election portion of the show is Trump's small donor dollars are fueling a big surge in GOP fundraising. The Republican National Committee raised more than $100 million in the first 9 months of 2017, making this the first time it has raised that much money that fast in a non-presidential election year. The record-breaking fundraising can be largely attributed to a flurry of small dollar donors responding to fundraising appeals by the first Republican president in 8 years, Donald Trump, according to a new report to be released later this week, obtained by McClathy, D.C. This is looking to be one of the most expensive midterms ever, so we definitely need the money. So let's go into the money on this stuff. The RNC raised $10.4 million in September, and currently how it stands, they have $104 million raised this year with $44.1 in the bank.
With zero debt.
Comparatively, the DNC has raised $46.3 million and have $6.8 million in cash. And it doesn't say this here, but they have about $5 million in debt. So, yeah, do you want me to read a little statement from the RNC financial chairman?
Go right ahead.
This is from RNC Finance Chairman Steve Wynn. Quote, "The size of the financial support is historically remarkable, but we must recognize why it is remarkable. Regardless of the media counterspin, the goal of the Trump administration to reform the tax burden and relieve the pain of a destructive healthcare system is resonating with tremendous emotional consensus with the voters themselves. Polls are misleading, and the desire for change around the country is overwhelming, and the Democrats are 180 degrees off course. We have the right ideas, and we're on time. As we go forward, this truth will be confirmed month after month." And we've been saying this for a long time, and it's going to help us immensely, okay? The Democrats have how many Senate seats they're defending? They have 10 in Trump states.
They got 23 total.
23 they have to defend. The Republicans only have 10 total. Senate races are the most costly. They're going to have to spend millions of dollars there. They're still trying to get the House back. Mm-hmm. Where's the money going to be to do that? As we've said many times in the show, for the primaries, there are currently 200 different people running for Democratic seats. The most they've ever had before is 65. So if the establishment for the Democrats want to keep their guys, and they're going to spend money in the primaries, they're going to be spending money fighting their own. So once it comes time for the midterms, they're going to raise more money. They're going to get more money as it gets closer, but yeah, it's not looking promising in terms of money, and money matters a lot.
And as the Democratic Party has their their growing progressive base that's trying to drive the party farther to the left, if you've got like a moderate Democrat in power, and you're facing a primary challenger who is a progressive, a far left progressive, you're going to try to spend a lot of money to try to beat them. And if you try to change your platform to try to win those people over, people who are, centrists or middle-of-the-road people are not going to vote for far-left candidates in the general election, especially if the person who's a Republican tends to be more moderate. so that being said, not only do you have to consider that you got to waste money defending your own seat, you got to realize that if you are driven too far to the left, you're going to lose to the Republican. And that's not what they want. So they're fighting not only, so you're right, they're fighting themselves and they're fighting us, and they're going to waste a lot of money doing it, and they're still going to lose.
Yeah.
But the last thing I wanted to say, sorry for interrupting you there, but they have Trump's re-election campaign.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get into.
Okay, yeah.
Go into it.
Okay, I'll just say it then. They announced Monday that so far this year, the Donald Trump 2020 re-election campaign has raised $25 million. Keep in mind, the RNC raised $100 million.
Yeah.
So that includes $10.1 million during the 3 months ending September 30th, and $1.2 million of which came from contributions of $200 or less. So not only is the Republican Party raising so much money, Trump's election campaign alone has raised almost over half as much as the Democratic Party has raised total.
And he is discretionary on that. He can fund that into races if he wants to.
Yes, he can.
And just to give you an idea how we have been using this, we just talked about the race in Virginia. The RNC has aided Ed Gillespie with $3 million so far, and there's 3 weeks to go. They're still going to dump more money in there. We have the money to win places that are close, and maybe we shouldn't even be winning.
I don't know, but they said that in Virginia, the Republican Party has sent 85 field staffers to try to get Ed Gillespie to win that governor race. That's a larger in-state presence than the Republicans had in the total 2016 election in that state.
Yeah.
So think about that.
So some really good stuff that we're seeing out of there. Let's go into the bottom of stack national news.
Yes.
And you got the first one here.
I do. So the first story that we have up here is just a continuation of a story that we talked about the last couple of weeks, in that Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl, the guy who deserted his post and then was kept in as a prisoner by in Afghanistan since 2009, has pleaded guilty to desertion and misbehavior. It was expected that he was going to do that this week. That's what we reported last week on the show. And so that's exactly what's happened. So he has not been sentenced yet. But, so he's expected to be sentenced on October 23rd, which is tomorrow, actually. So I guess on next week's show, we can talk about what his sentencing is. Hopefully, it'll be life imprisonment. Because I think 5 guys died trying to rescue him.
Yeah.
And he deserted his post, so he deserves to be thrown up in Leavenworth.
Most definitely. I'm just glad that this is happening. I don't really have too much else to say on it, though.
No, we just wanted to update you with how that story is going. So
is the next thing we have here the McCain stuff?
The next thing we have is the McCain stuff.
So this is the big globalism stuff that we're talking about. There's 3 speeches that we want to talk about. One by McCain, George Bush gave a speech this week, and Barack Obama gave a speech this week. This really gives you an insight how across party lines there's this globalist consensus against Trump and Trumpianism and nationalism that should really wake people up to how politics works.
Yeah, you want me to go ahead and read what McCain's statement here when he said it?
Yes.
He says, quote, "To fear the world we have organized and led for 3/4 of a century, to abandon the ideals we have advanced around the globe, to refuse the obligations of internal leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems, is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past that Americans consigned to the ash heap of history." So he called pretty much the Donald Trump movement half-baked, spurious nationalism. That would almost be a good title for this episode.
Well, we already thought of a title earlier.
I know,
Maybe we'll do that.
I'm joking.
But yeah, the idea that we'd have our own, we just take care of our own, putting America first. He calls that half-baked.
And he even goes on to say, "We live in a land made of ideals, not blood and soil. We have done great good in the world. That leadership has its costs. But we have become incomparably powerful and wealthy as we did." He added, "We have a moral obligation to continue in our just cause, and we would bring more than shame on ourselves if we don't. We will not thrive in a world where our leadership and ideals are absent. We don't deserve to. So, McCain's a piece of shit, in my opinion. That's,
Yeah.
But he's pretty much saying that, like, the Donald Trump movement, Donald Trump himself, it's what he's talking about is Donald Trump. He's talking about the movement behind him, the MAGA agenda. That is what he is referring to when he is talking about all of this stuff. John McCain is a globalist.
Yes.
That's what you said. That is the truth. And
I'm not one to talk about George Soros so much, and we actually do have a story on George Soros this week, but some of George Soros is a donor for John McCain.
Yeah.
That should give you a picture on it. If you care about that kind of stuff, it should spell a big warning to you. And I'm not insulting your intelligence. You probably hate John McCain too. So
yeah. And what's interesting is when he gave this speech, you know what he was giving it for?
What?
He was receiving a medal called the Liberty Medal in Philadelphia. And you know who presented him with the Liberty Medal?
Who?
Former Vice President Joe Biden.
Jesus Christ.
So Joe Biden's sitting right there when McCain's giving this speech. In case anyone wondered.
I remember it was a couple weeks ago. Joe Biden gave a speech on how we need to defeat populism,
Mm-hmm.
and populism just means like running on policies that. Oh, we got an ambulance going by.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, but populism just means that you're running on stuff that the average American wants. The middle American. So that should tell you something how they view you. They don't care about your interests. So the next speech that we also wanted to get into is a little speech that George Bush gave this week on Thursday in New York City, which was pretty much a point-by-point rejection of Trumpianism. Let me go over a couple of quotes from him. Bush condemned nationalism distorted into nativism. He derided discourse degraded by casual cruelty. He says that our politics seem more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. And most importantly, Bush said that bigotry seems emboldened. Yeah. And there's been so much praise this week for this speech George Bush got from the liberals and the left. It should really tell you something about how things have changed. Most people that are Republicans don't like Bush anymore.
Not anymore.
And, it's crazy. They spent 8 years deriding this guy as, like, this evil idiot. And, us going into Iraq, that caused the death of 1 million innocent Iraqis. He's pretty much a war criminal. Now they're praising George Bush over, for condemning the evil Donald Trump, who hasn't done anything nearly as bad as what George Bush has ever done.
Yeah, and Donald Trump's the one who's spoken out against the type of stuff that George W. Bush did. And now the left, who, they try to call Trump Hitler, they called Bush Hitler his entire 8 years in office. And now they're defending him, saying, oh, see, he's great. He hates Donald Trump too. Maybe he's not such a bad guy. God, it's just, obviously these people are being hypocritical. But,
there wasn't a quote in the article we were looking at, but I know he also said in his speech in terms of globalism, it's something that we can't reject at this point.
Yeah.
So, he's co-signing us away to something that will ruin this country.
Well, I gotta, sorry to tell you there, George, but globalism is being rejected. It is being rejected big time.
Across the world.
Across the entire world right now. And if you are pro-globalism, your time is up. And if you don't see the writing on the wall, then you better take off your rose-colored glasses, because it is there.
So you want to get into the last speech that we wanted to highlight. Barack Obama gave his first speech this year. Do you got us some quotes on this?
Yeah, I have a couple of quotes. So this is also something. He said, he called on voters to reject a growing politics of division, which is funny because, politics became more divided under Obama's presidency than any time pretty much in history, maybe back to like the Civil War.
Yeah.
Implying that Donald Trump had set American democracy back 50 years as he returned to the campaign trail for the first time since leaving the White House.
What does that even mean? He won a Democratic election. He's not anti-democracy. He's in the White House because of democracy.
Yeah. And he said, what we can't have is the same old politics of division that we have seen so many times before that dates back centuries. He said, some of the politics we see now, we thought we had put to bed. That's folks looking back 50 years. It's the 21st century, not the 19th century. That's a fallacy right there. But he also went to go and he said, we've got folks who are deliberately trying to make folks angry, to demonize people who have different ideals, to get the base all riled up because it provides a short-term tactical advantage. Sometimes that feels frustrating. And, I don't really want to read anything else that Barack Obama has to say about Donald Trump.
But it's funny that they all came out this week to say this stuff.
Yeah.
And, George Bush, he spent 8 years not saying anything under Barack Obama, but he's coming out against, the first Republican president since he was president. Where was he when he could have been condemning Obamacare? Or, the vast executive orders that Barack Obama was doing that, was destroying this country. He was nowhere to be seen. It's really indicative of how, the establishment on the left and the right, they're in cahoots. They both have the same end goals. And that's why we need to destroy the establishment and replace the party with something that actually benefits America.
And, I would feel completely depressed if it weren't for the fact that our side is winning right now.
Very much so.
And I think
they're afraid.
Know it.
That's why they had to make this speech.
I was going to say, I think they know it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be giving these speeches to try to, if anything, gaslight our side into thinking that, their side is winning.
They're relics of politics of the past.
Right.
They, McCain, Obama, Bush, they're not going to have an influence in the future, and they don't like it at all.
History is not going to judge those people lightly.
No.
History already is not judging George W. Bush lightly.
Or Obama.
And I was going to say Obama, especially Obama, both of them really, there's a reason they called him Bushma, because they're the same president. Name one foreign policy that Obama had that wasn't Bush's.
It was about the same.
It was the same.
But, the liberals, they condemned Bush for it, but, under Obama, they didn't say shit.
Mm-mm.
Even though Obama destroyed plenty of different countries. Okay, he destroyed Libya. He was aiding, the Muslim Brotherhood. He was getting us involved in Syria. Stuff I don't want, but he did it for us anyways. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Let's go into the next thing that also ties into this a lot, really. George Soros, the billionaire hedge fund manager, who is a major contributor to liberal and democratic causes, turned over nearly $18 billion to his nonprofit group, Open Society Foundations, which, if you don't know what that is, it pays into a lot of different leftist causes, open borders, Black Lives Matter, stuff we don't really like too much. That is the majority of his assets he put into it.
Wow.
The guy now is 87 years old, so I guess he's predicting that he's going to die pretty soon. But, yeah, that's a lot of money that he's throwing against. It's not only going to be spent here, it's going to be spent everywhere. But these guys are scared. He's throwing everything that he can against this. We just went over 3 speeches. These guys are trying to fight nationalism. At the end of the day, I think we're going to win.
I think we are.
No matter what they throw against us. Because we have the ideas on our side. We have what the public actually wants on our side. And they're seeing the effects of globalism, and they just don't like it. Okay? The project of globalism, the post-Cold War, end of history, Francis Fukuyama conception of neoliberal democracy, the managerial state, that they thought they could export to everywhere in the world to create some sort of monoculture. It's not working, and it's failing where it was based on the most, in Europe and the United States. So, I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because it does matter. He also spends a lot of this money on things like refugees and amnesty, so bad stuff. But let's get into the next thing that we have. What's the next thing that we have?
Next thing that we have up is a delegate making a statement on Puerto Rico. Or I'm say a Puerto Rican delegate making a statement on Trump, really.
Oh, yes. An interview with USA Today, Puerto Rico's delegate to the House of Representatives, Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who is a Republican that doesn't actually like Trump all that much. I know she supported Marco Rubio in the primaries. She said the following: I will tell you that everything that the president said that he was going to send the island is getting there. The resources are there. The help is there. There are things that I never do, but, you know, the president is always out of the script. And I think that's the main difference. People are used to having politicians that are politically correct, that follow the script, and he's not like that. I mean, what you see is what you get, and that's the way he is. He instructed all of his cabinet members to treat Puerto Rico as a state in terms of the hurricane, and I mean this, that kind of instruction is important to have access to all of those programs. I was very surprised that the president was very aware of the situation on the island, having daily briefings in the Situation Room. He actually spoke with the governor once or twice a day during the hurricane and after the hurricane. So that kind of conversation never happened before. I mean, this is a new way to have access to resources and communications. I was really grateful, and he listened to problems. There are things that I never do, but
You already read that part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I won't say that I'm comfortable or that I praise all the ways he managed the issue, but I will tell you that everything the president said that he was going to send to the island, it's getting there.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of destroys the narrative of the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, who, being all on TV wearing a shirt that said, "We are dying," wearing one of them nasty woman t-shirts, who, apparently was holding that stuff and not allowing the resources to go to her own people.
And there's some investigation into her right now.
Yes. Holding resources, not allowing them to go to her own people in an effort to try to make Donald Trump look bad. Not good on her part. And what's even worse is the left ate that stuff up.
And the media tried to create this narrative, a false narrative that, these hurricanes that just hit through, that's Trump's Hurricane Katrina, that he wasn't there to help them when they needed it like Bush did with New Orleans. That is not the case at all. And someone that doesn't like Trump just admitted that to us. So yeah, that's dispelling some fake news there that I thought was important to get into.
It's very important.
Let's go into the next thing that we have here, which is some more monuments coming down.
Yeah, this, I think, of all the monument stories that we've heard, as disgusting as they are, this one I think is one of the more disgusting that I've heard. So, a federal court has ruled that a World War I memorial cross must be taken down. A World War I memorial cross. Back in 1925, the American Legion erected a memorial in Bladensburg, Maryland, to honor the memory of 45 men who perished during World War I. The 40-foot-tall memorial cross became known as the Peace Cross. And in 2014, the American Humanist Association, which is a group that believes in, quote, being good without a god, filed a lawsuit alleging the cross-shaped monument is unconstitutional and demanding it be demolished, altered, or removed. Well, personally, for me, I think their group should be demolished, altered, and removed.
Oh, yeah.
They said they alleged the cross carries a, quote, inherently religious message and creates the unmistakable appearance of honoring only Christian servicemen. On Wednesday, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed and ruled the historic memorial must be torn down, all because the Bladensburg Memorial is in the shape of a cross. They said that the memorial excessively entangles the government in religion because the cross is the core symbol of Christianity and breaches the wall separating church and state.
So it's pretty disgusting. A monument that's been there for quite a while.
The monument's been there since 1925.
Yeah, that's honoring our servicemen that died in World War I, who, newsflash, the vast majority were Christians, okay?
And not just the people who died in World War I, the 49 men from that very city.
Yes.
49 from that city alone.
Yes.
Okay? That's the reason they put that up. It's because to honor the people who were from there. Not just a generic, it's a World War I memorial cross. To honor the people from the very city they live in.
Yeah, it really gets the blood boiling, and this is, on the backs of all the other monuments that we've seen, getting taken down or vandalized or destroyed right now, which you look at the Pew Research polling on that, 75% of Americans don't want Confederate monuments to come down, let alone World War I monuments. Only a very vocal 20% is opposed to Confederate statues. I don't even know what would be for this World War I monument, but yeah, it's pretty bullshit.
You know what? I hope the left doubles down on this. I really do. Because stories like this do not bid well for the leftists.
Yeah.
Okay?
Makes them look bad.
If you're starting to take down memorial crosses to World War I veterans, any support you had at all from, like I said, moderate left-leaning people has gone out the window. And they're going to say, screw that. I'm out of here. You people are crazy. Not only that, but what's even worse, the part that we haven't even mentioned before, I mean, we've mentioned before in the show, but we haven't mentioned it this episode yet, is the fact that circuit court agreed with them. Okay, this is why we need a complete purge of these courts.
Yeah.
A complete purge of these courts. Remove these people from power. Impeach them, get rid of them, arrest them. I would be okay with sending these people to jail, saying, you are a direct threat to what this country stands for. And I think you would agree with me in me saying that the judge who made that decision threatens this country.
Yeah, it's crazy what these people are doing. And, the left doesn't have power in this country. There's they haven't had, disenfranchisement from power like this since, the 1920s. So the only thing they have left is the judiciary. And we've seen the vast oversteps that they've been doing. And they want to push that because their progressive narrative has gone insanely crazy, especially under Barack Obama. They kept winning and winning and winning, pushing the culture war farther and farther and farther. They can't turn it off, but they don't have power. So the only way that they do this stuff is protests, vandalizing stuff, and judges doing things they're not supposed to.
And the other thing about the judges that people aren't realizing is Trump's administration is approving new circuit court judges left and right.
Not as fast as he should be, but yeah, he is.
Maybe not as fast as he should be, but he's on track to have more within his first year than any president in history. Okay? 25 years from now, when Trump is not president and Democrats probably have power again, who is still going to be there? The same judges that have life terms. The same judges who believe in the same things that Donald Trump does. We are slowly turning the judiciary around. Unfortunately, we won't see the benefits of that for a while. But that's something that's not being talked about, but is very, very good that's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And just remember that as these things go forward. Because, like we were saying, 75% of Americans don't want Confederate monuments to be taken down. I guarantee you that number is even higher for this cross.
Oh,
if you were to poll everybody in America, it'd be 85-90% of people. Okay? Like I was saying when we were doing our paleo-conservative episode, when 10% of the people are able to make a decision that 90% of the people disagree with,
that's not democracy.
That is tyranny of the majority. That is not democracy. Okay?
Tyranny of the minority.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, tyranny. No, it is tyranny. Yeah, you're right. Tyranny of the minority. That is a threat to democracy right there.
Yeah.
You think Russia was a threat to our democracy? Left-wing judges agreeing with these people are a threat to our democracy.
Yeah.
That's the pure truth right there.
Let's go into the next story that we have, though. And this story, if your blood's not boiling already, we're going to continue that trend. So this week, out of Wyoming, a trans woman sexually assaulted a 10-year-old girl in the bathroom. Now, we were trying to look into this where it happened, store-wise. We couldn't figure it out. But, yeah, Miguel Martinez, who goes by Michelle, was found guilty of first-degree and second-degree sexual abuse of a minor, the Casper Tribune reports. Martinez is facing potentially 70 years in prison. Yeah, this is the stuff that we warned out when we were trying to pass these bills, and they said this shit was never going to happen. It just did.
They said Martinez allegedly invited the young girl into the bathroom with him, where he allegedly fondled the girl's breasts and genitalia before penetrating her. The girl told the police that it, quote, hurt inside when he penetrated her, causing her to cry, according to the report. Nurses at a nearby medical center completed a sexual assault exam and found redness and abrasions of the girl's genitalia. Local media reportedly described Martinez as a family friend of the 10-year-old, probably why she actually, went in there with him, because he wasn't a stranger.
Yeah.
Let's just say most of these things happen by people you know. And that's the same thing is true. They said that the assault is reported to have taken place in the bathroom of a residence, not a public restroom, as was originally reported to the media. So that's why we were unable to find this, because a lot of people thought it was public, but I guess it was actually a private, like at a home or something like that. But so this is the most disgusting story I've heard in a while.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a 10-year-old girl, and you're a man who thinks you're a woman.
And, we've been having this conversation for many years now. The big conversation was Target supported this kind of initiative. And, people voted with their, money. They boycotted Target hard. They felt the repercussions of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually learned about this story, they'd boycott them even harder. And anyone that supports this kind of shit.
And let alone the Target story. I mean, there was a story that came out actually, I think this was a couple weeks ago. Actually, this was almost a year ago. Not even a couple weeks ago. This is back from July of 2016. There's a story where a man in Idaho who identifies as a transgender woman, this was shortly after, Target changed their policy, he goes arrested and charged with felony accounts of taking pictures of women while he was in the bathroom, in the changing rooms. All because he was a man who says, I think I'm a woman. I'm going to go in here. Guess what? Now I'm in jail for taking pictures of people, when I never should have been able to even have the opportunity to do that to begin with.
Yeah, transgenderism is a mental disorder.
It is.
You can't change what you biologically are. You can't change your chromosomes just because you think something different. And the left enables this stuff, and they actually turn them into a victimhood class. It's just insane. And, you go back 10 years ago, I didn't even think, gay marriage could ever even happen. I didn't think that we'd be talking about transgender people like we do now.
If you remember back to when there was, when the whole gay marriage debate really started to pick up steam in the late 90s, they promised this type of stuff would never be part of it. No, give us the rights. Give us the rights. We're not going to worry about the transgender people. We're not going to worry about that stuff. What did they immediately pivot to once gay people got their right to marry?
Transgenderism.
Which wasn't even law.
They talk about, slippery slopes don't exist. That's just a fallacy. No, it happens. We just saw it. It's so frustrating.
And I hate to use the slippery slope argument, but really, what's next? They're already starting to talk about pedophilia.
Yeah, that's the next place that they're going.
Bestiality?
They're trying to get rid of consent laws. And, a lot of that has to also do with the gay community. You look at the 90s when they were really starting to push gay rights and stuff. This is also a time where NAMBLA started, and you look at the culture of the gay community. It's something 60 or 70% of pedophiles are gay. It's kind of a crazy thing to say, but gay people reproduce through sexual abuse. And, they also have, pederasty in their community where, older men will take on younger boys and stuff. And, everyone likes to complain about, Catholics are abusing children or whatnot. That didn't happen until they first started allowing, gays to be priests. They don't talk about that at all. So, some controversial stuff to talk about because you might hurt some people's feelings and you're not being entirely progressive, but we gotta acknowledge things for how they are.
I was gonna say, hey, sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah. You wanna go to the next thing?
Yeah, let's go ahead and.
So the next thing, also in terms of negligence towards children, is there's some reports coming out of Baltimore. They have a project called Project Baltimore that's investigating some scandals happening out there. And what we found out this week is there are schools in Baltimore where they're passing students that never even showed up for a single day of class. According to Fox 45, they interviewed a guy named, a principal. Oh, no. They didn't release who the person was, their name, to protect them. But this is a teacher from Calverton, the Calverton School District out there in Baltimore. This was a message that the principal, Marcia Cooper, instructed these teachers to say. Please double-check end-of-year averages and make sure they are above 60%. The message went on to say that averages below 60 should be corrected so that failing students could be pushed through the system. Let me give you the exact quote. Good morning, people. The secretary is printing report cards, so finally you can get cumulatives finished. Please double check end of years. I just said that. And they even, passed along people that never even showed up. There was 4 people, 2 from elementary school and 2 from 7th grade that even passed, they didn't show up at all. They still, had to hold them back. So I have no idea what they did to, not pass in a school district like this. But you talk about, educational integrity and educational fraud, which is a huge problem in this country. This is an example. In Baltimore, they have some of the worst dropout rates in the country. So they don't lose their jobs since we have stuff like No Child Left Behind. The teachers have to do stuff like this. I saw this stuff personally when I was in high school. I worked in the attendance office, and I was privy to how people attend. And they had a policy where if you didn't show up for unexcused something like 7 or 8 times, you can't pass. And I knew a lot of people that didn't do that. But the principal sent around a message you got to pass them on anyways. Because they were already underperforming. If they did it another year, they'd have to change out the entire administration, and some teachers would be fired. So just knowing my graduation class, a third of those people shouldn't have walked, but they just pushed them on. This is something they do all across the country.
Yeah, I was going to say, my school district was very similar. There was a policy where the lowest grade you can get in a class was a 50. Or something like that. So you would still fail the class, but you wouldn't fail with a 0. They actually got rid of that, I think, my junior year of high school. Not sure how it really affected anything because I didn't really associate with anyone who was getting 50s in that. Nor did I really care. But I know that we had at least a similar type of policy at our school that recently had gotten changed. I know that.
So it's insane. They're not even doing their job. I mean, they should be failing kids if they deserve it. It's so stupid. And you look at grade inflation in this country, it's not that hard to get an A in this country at all. And the way that teachers mark people up, people are getting straight A's and they're still not ready to go to college at all.
Yeah.
Because high school doesn't prepare you for it. Education's so bad in this country, there needs to be drastic reform. We talked about educational reform, actually, in the paleoconservative right-wing populism a little bit. I know a lot about that topic, not so much you. Maybe someday I'll talk about it. But, things in this country, education-wise, are terrible.
Yeah, and we were talking about during paleoconservatism about No Child Left Behind.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is you should be leaving them behind, and you should keep on driving.
It's the responsibility of the parents to get these kids up to, bar. Why would you punish the teachers if these kids can't perform?
Why would you punish the other students if these people can't perform?
Yeah, it holds them down.
Because that's what No Child Left Behind really does. It punishes the students who are above average to try to get the people who are below average up to average. That's the problem.
Yeah. Let's move on to the last story we have for national news before we go into current year college craziness. And this is the funniest story we have for national news that we've been planning to talk about all week. We've been pretty excited. So this happened out of Brownsville, Texas. The county DA's office is looking into $1.2 million worth of purchases that were stolen by an employee. And I know what this is, but when you get $1.2 million stolen from the government, what do you think? It's like embezzling or something.
Yeah.
It was fajitas. Yeah. The Cameron County District Attorney's Office has has beef with one juvenile justice department employee who allegedly stole $1.2 million worth of fajitas during the past 9 years. The Cameron County Juvenile Justice Department doesn't serve fajitas. There was a shipment of 800 pounds of fajitas that showed up at the cafeteria there, and they were just like, but we don't serve fajitas. Why are we getting this huge shipment of fajitas? So they looked into it, and there was an employee, Gilberto Escamilla, and it turns out he's been ordering these fajitas in behalf of the government, and he's been getting these shipments and just personally taking them and selling them out to people in the community.
Wow.
So, getting past like 2,500 to 30,000 like taken, that's already like a state jailable offense felony. So this guy's going away for a very long time, and it's because he's stealing fajitas. It's just funny. It's just weird, like what on earth is going on? But yeah, I mean, you just stole $1.2 million worth of taxpayer fajitas. That's I mean, good on him, I guess, if you could figure out how to get this fajita scheme going. But just like, what the hell? How do they not notice this is happening?
I was going to say, I guess the chief fajita thief struck again. But you said earlier that they had a beef with him.
Yeah.
Was it beef fajitas?
Maybe it was. It doesn't say if they're chicken fajitas or beef fajitas. I don't really know which kind of fajitas I like more. Living in Texas, we have great fajitas. I used to live in Wisconsin. We do not have Mexican food like that, like we do have in Texas.
The closer you get to the border, the better the Mexican food
Brownsville is right on the Mexico border.
Yeah, if you don't know your geography of Texas, if you know what Texas looks like, look at the very, very, very bottom tip. That's Brownsville right there. So congratulations. Now you know what we're talking about. So, yeah. Chief fajita thief is what I like to call this guy. You know what? I think that I think here's what we should do with this guy.
What should we do with this guy?
As punishment, we should make him serve fajitas. We should make
in
him
jail.
In jail. Or if you let him out of jail, make him work at like a taco truck that only serves fajitas. And then monitor him so he can't steal it. But have him give out free fajita, not free fajitas because that would be taxpayer funded, but have him have to sell fajitas from a taco truck in order to earn back enough money to repay the state.
He has a lot of experience, handling fajitas, so, he'd be perfect for it.
Exactly. So I think that, if anything, he has, like you said, he has a lot of experience handling fajitas and selling fajitas. I bet you he has more experience and he's better at handling fajitas and selling fajitas than some fajita salesmen do.
Yeah.
So if anything, you should hire this guy to become your new chief fajita man.
He should just be on the behalf of the state, sell fajitas and get nothing and stay in jail.
And then just put all the money back towards paying back the money that he stole from them.
Yeah, that'd be good justice.
And so then everybody benefits. The state gets paid back, and people get high quality fajitas from an experienced fajita salesman who's better than probably regular people. I'm telling you, this plan would work.
God, when I saw this story, I was just like, is this even real? How do you get $1.2 million worth of fajitas? And no one noticed for 9 years. That's the craziest part. They only noticed because 800 pounds of fajitas just randomly showed up. They're like, we don't even serve fajitas. What's going on?
Well, I got to tell you something. Look at this from my perspective. I'm an accountant, okay?
Yeah.
Part of accounting is trying to find fraud. Most fraud is discovered
through small transactions.
Well, I mean, that's how it occurs.
Yeah.
Is through small transactions. But a majority of fraud is discovered not by people turning themselves in, but by accident. Or at least not really a majority, but a large number of it. So if you try to fact check that, a large number of it is discovered by accident. This was a complete accident. I guarantee you, Mr. Chief Fajita Thief did not want 800 pounds of his fajitas to be delivered to one location at one time.
No, they just screwed up the fajita mafia scheme.
And that's how he got caught. That's how he was able to perpetuate this for 9 years. because he was able to do it in small things that weren't getting him caught.
Now, we need an investigation into the entire, underground fajita trade that this guy is in, because it's time we bring these criminals to justice.
Yes, a sweet, tasty, savory, sizzly justice.
Let's
get into career.
Let's go to the career college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic.
You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
He will not divide us! He will not divide us! He will not divide us! He will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment that keeps on giving every single week. It has something really infuriating, story, just pisses me off and makes me sad. And, we talk about all the different crazy stories happening here and abroad, but it's majority of the stories happen here because we're the kings of crazy bullshit happening on college campuses. And there was some really, really good stories this week. I'm used to, collecting most of the stories every single week, and I was dumbfounded with how crazy they are this week. And we're starting off with a real doozy of one, a fake hate crime.
Another fake hate crime.
Fake hate crime. So at the University of Maryland this week, it was discovered that a 52-year-old black man was painting a swastika inside the campus living quarters. He did this on a trash can on the 5th floor of Hagerstown Hall. One student, apparently bewildered by the news, didn't seem to recognize the possibility of the guy's artwork being an attempt to stage an anti-Semitic sentiment. He says, "I guess it does prove that you don't have to be of a certain race to hate people." So he didn't really realize that, this is like trying to frame white people for a hate crime.
That's what every single fake hate crime has been, is trying to frame our side as doing something wrong.
Yeah, right-wing white people. But he says, but I mean, it's just, you would think that someone, especially from a race that has been subjected to hate before, you'd think, why would you want to reciprocate that to somebody else? I wonder why. I wonder why. So, this guy has been arrested. We don't really know what's going to happen to him. But, fake hate crimes. They happen a lot. Mm-hmm. We've reported
most of the hate crimes that have been reported have turned out to be fake.
Yeah,
that's the truth. You can fact check me on that.
Yeah, there's so many that happen. We've reported on so many. It hasn't been a while. It's been a while since we reported on one, so I was glad that we had a pretty fun one to get into. Mm-hmm. So let's go into the next thing that's really crazy, and this is happening at the University of Minnesota. They are allowing students to erase cheating violations. They're putting in a program that allows you to expunge cheating violations from your record. All you have to do is go to a meeting, which is a 2-hour on-campus program around the topic of integrity. They believe that they'll enhance integrity by, having these meetings and forgiving people for cheating.
So theoretically, you could just go ahead and cheat yourself, pass your exams, get caught, go to a 2-hour meeting, and then continue on with your career.
Yeah. And we talk about incentives a ton on the show, and especially in terms of tax and welfare and stuff, but look at the incentive structure of what they're doing here. Mm-hmm. If you can just go to a 2-hour meeting, okay, you can cheat and maybe you don't even get caught. But what's the repercussions of even being caught? You just go to the meeting.
The risk of cheating is suddenly much, much lower. Because right now, as it stands, at least at our college, you get caught cheating,
you're expelled.
You don't come back. That's on your record. No other college is going to want to take you if they know that you've been a that you've been a cheater. So, you're absolutely right. It is about, incentivizing people to do certain behaviors. And you're literally telling them, we don't care if you cheat. Because the punishment is like a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
It's crazy, but I guess they think it's a good idea at the University of Minnesota. And the people that, are deciding to do that, they probably, have like a bachelor's or PhD, so they know the best. They know better than I do, apparently.
Because, they're the elites.
Yeah.
They are the academic elites who
Their
are
idea
in
is
charge.
so stupid, it takes an intellectual to believe in them.
I hate to say it, but that is entirely true.
Yeah.
Like, you go to any, go to, some redneck on the street and tell them this, and be like, that's dumb as fuck.
Yeah.
You go to some New York liberal university and be like, oh, I can understand the benefits.
They're the
of
same
that.
people that think Marxism is a good idea, though.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into the next story. This is a
being
story...
educated doesn't mean you're smarter. That's all I'm going to say.
Not at all. This is a story out of the University of Santa Cruz. The majority of the stories this week, I believe, are out of California. Most weeks, there are at least half the stories.
The next 3 stories we have are all from California.
Yeah. So this week there was a college Republicans meeting at the library there in, UC Santa Cruz, and a bunch of protesters showed up and started yelling at them. One of the ringleaders of the protest was a student activist named Haik Edeman, who posted an announcement in their official UCSC student Facebook group calling on students to deny the CR group their First Amendment rights. Quote, this is from the Post. Quote, white supremacists, I always say supremacist. Mm-hmm. I'm always mocking it with supremacist, I'm sorry. White supremacist, fascist, sympathizing college Republicans are having a meeting at McHenry Library, room 0332. Everyone be aware of this violent racist activity happening every day on this campus. He also wrote, adding, we need a movement of people on the campus that reject the right of assembly or right of free speech for white supremacists and fascists. So these people show up to the library. They're yelling fascists, racists, white supremacists. The college Republicans, at first they didn't tell them they needed to leave. They wanted to talk, it out. They were okay to debate them and stuff. But they,
that side is ever going to actually want to debate anything.
Yeah, they started yelling that dialogue is violence, and they started saying that the club's presence is a threat to the library and demand they leave. Even the protesters reportedly berated library staff when they refused to shut down the pre-approved meeting. Yeah, there was a lot of commotion going on. There's a video you can watch of this happening on Campus Reform. It took nearly 2 hours before school officials eventually called the police, and they arrested 3 people there.
What's worse is I'm reading the story here. One of the staff members from the library actually asked the college Republicans members to leave in order to end the disturbance. They didn't ask the protesters to leave. They told the college Republicans people to leave, but the meeting attendees chose to respond by sitting quietly and refusing to leave the area.
Yeah.
So not only that, but you got people who are staff members at that library on those protesters' sides.
Yes.
That's completely insane.
So, that story really sucks to hear. I don't like that college Republicans get attacked because they're definitely not radical groups. They're not white supremacist, racist, fascists. They're usually just people that want free markets. So
they're more libertarian than anything else.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Let's go to the next story. This is a story out of UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles. They're having a panel on Tuesday over civil discourse, which makes this story extra ironic. And it was shut down by protesters who got on the stage and started yelling. One of them started yelling, "This fascist regime needs to be taken down." They started doing "No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA" chants, which is the best chant that they have. I love that chant. Gets me going. But, yeah.
Yeah.
They accuse them of not dealing with the reality that they're facing right now. This is outrageous. You're not dealing with the reality. You're not dealing with the reality that we're facing right now, where people are being deported. Yes, you can take me out of this room, but I'm not going to shut up. One of the individuals that was not identified yelled as security guards attempted to remove her. Look, we need to actually organize ourselves to create a political crisis to get this fascist regime from power, she continued to yell, claiming that the country was founded on genocide and slavery, and that America was never fucking great. We can't normalize fascism, she yelled. Stand up, because this is what the good Germans were facing. This is what the people in Nazi Germany were facing. Yeah.
Yeah, so, panel on civil discourse,
Ended, uncivilly.
This is one of the problems that you continue to run into is, people on the right, and even not people on the right, people on the left too, are finding out that when you're dealing with these crazy people like this, you are not having civil discourse.
It looks bad for you. I mean, there's a quote in the article, a Democrat said, like, this is embarrassing. This makes us look bad.
Yeah. And what's unfortunate is, like we were saying, the college Republican story we just had, they at first attempted to try to, talk to them and have a discussion with them. You can't have a rational discussion with these people.
Yeah.
They're literally incapable of having rational discussions. They don't care what you have to say. If you give them the option, they'd probably try to kill you in some instances. And that's true. We've seen it try to happen. People have been assaulted for the last 2 years.
Yeah. Crazy, crazy stuff. California. And California is where the next story is also.
Oh!
The next story comes out of California State University, Fullerton, where 70 faculty members signed an open letter calling for the university to not allow the College Republicans' upcoming event, which was to bring Milo Yiannopoulos to campus. Yeah, they claimed that, he has put students in jeopardy by publicly sharing information regarding their gender and citizen status, that they don't want to have alt-right speakers or hate groups come to campus. They said that Milo Yiannopoulos has repeatedly incited violence and at previous events, causing vulnerable students to feel unsafe that they're coming. Milo Yiannopoulos is pretty scary. Which it's funny. Okay, they call him alt-right. He's not at all.
No.
He's Jewish, gay, married to a black man. That's not stuff they like.
Just recently married to a black man, too.
Yeah, just recently. I mean, he pretty much just, advocates for, libertarianism and, I guess, Trumpian stuff, anti-SJW things. But it's also just ironic. You go back to earlier in the year, Milo Yiannopoulos' UC Berkeley speaking event got shut down because of violent riots that was, $100,000 of property damage. Mm-hmm. So they're saying that, Milo Yiannopoulos is inciting violence when it's projection. The left's the one that's causing the violence. Okay, we don't do stuff like this at all if there's some sort of communist speaker that comes to campus.
There are communist speakers that come to our campus all the time. We don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't care. I got better things to do. But, a right-wing speaker like Yiannopoulos, or I remember Ben Shapiro recently went to Berkeley. No, that's something that we need to stop these fascists coming to campus.
I mean, the left does not believe in the First Amendment. They do not believe in free speech anymore, especially, these college-type kids that are doing it. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the First Amendment. They don't believe in freedom of expression. They don't believe in freedom of association. They've outright said that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the real threat to democracy here? It's that right there.
Yeah. These are antithetical to the Constitution that, describes what the American experience is supposed to be.
They want to overthrow the Constitution and replace it with whatever their communist shit ideology is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, is when you serve in the military, you swear an oath to protect the Constitution and defend the country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those people are attacking the Constitution, and they are domestic.
Yeah.
They are the enemy.
One thing Jordan Peterson says is people that you can no longer have a discussion with are enemies to you.
Mm-hmm.
We need to denote these people as our enemies because they are. We can't get around that. But the letter also goes to challenge the administration's assertion that the First Amendment compels us to allow the student group to host their speaker of choice, saying that Yiannopoulos' speech crosses the line between protected free speech and less protected free speech that incites violence. They have no quote for that, obviously, because he's never said anything that does. And that in any event, that the First Amendment doesn't compel them to provide a platform for that speech, but every public university is required to uphold the First Amendment and protect it. I don't have to have, like, if I want to bring any speaker to Texas State, all I need to do is book the room, and the university has to protect that. They can't stop it. That's how this stuff works. The professors also go on to say that we need to get rid of the notion that a college campus is a marketplace of ideas, saying that that is they're troubled by this neoliberal language because it implies that all ideas are equally worthy of consideration. So, right-wing ideas not allowed, not equal for consideration like communism is.
Like I said, they don't believe in free speech. They don't believe that you should even have the right to believe what you believe.
Yeah. So, 70 different professors there all sign their name to this. So you should get an idea, that's how the faculty views these things. Mm-hmm. And, you also got to remember there's people that didn't sign their name that also agree with this stuff there. So that's what it's like at most college campuses. I remember we saw a statistic last week. It's something like 12-1 professors in universities in the United States are liberal to conservative. Mm-hmm. So, if you're on the right and you want to send your kids there, you're thinking about going to college, remember that's the environment that you're getting into.
We've seen way too many pictures of, like, pretty young girls who have turned into these, like, radical feminists who, like, get a bunch of tattoos and
reject standards of beauty by cutting
their
your
heads,
hair off,
dye their hair, get a bunch of piercings, and it's like, why would you ever want your children to do that?
Yeah.
You're the parent. You're still in control.
They're rebelling by adopting, like, the establishment of academia thought process. Like, rebelling against that is actually being right-wing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun.
That's true. I know people like to make fun of Paul Joseph Watson for saying it, but it is kind of true. Conservatism is the new counterculture.
Yeah,
it is
in a
way.
Sense, yeah,
in a way.
Let's go into the last story, and I know you got this one.
So
this one is probably the worst one.
Yeah,
even though we have a lot of bad stories this week.
So this last story comes out of the University of Pennsylvania, where a teaching assistant named Stephanie McKellop said on Monday that she always calls on black women students first and white men last. And she said that, I was taught that as an undergrad by an amazing professor. In a follow-up tweet, she said, in normal life, who has the easiest time speaking? Most opportunities. Flip it. And then she goes on to say, the classroom is the place you get to control the social setting. Prioritize and encourage voices who are talked over, most often of the wild. And she is a marriage and family historian, apparently, with interests intersecting in areas of gender, sexuality, the body, and race. And she examines how marriage intersects with prostitution and human trafficking, and it's currently focusing on folk and popular marriage and divorce conflicted with state and church powers in colonial Carolina, according to the Daily Caller. She has since locked her Twitter account, and I checked before we did the show. It is still locked. She is at McKellogs, McKellogs, in case she ever unlocks it and you want to look at what her tweets show. So she was, complaining that, like, oh no, everybody's being mean to me. And what's interesting is she goes on to say that it's a series of tweets that were screenshotted after she locked her account. She said, I tweet about evening the disparities in the classroom with a pedagogical technique called progressive stacking. Because this involves calling on black students more readily than white men, the white nationalists and Nazis are very upset. They engaged in doxing, and I have screenshots of every stage of their mission that they tweeted publicly to dogpile the university, saying I'm racist. Hi, friends. The University of Pennsylvania is issuing a press release condemning me and my teaching practices. It comes out tomorrow. Good. I don't know what you all can do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I had the cute idea that Pennsylvania could defend me against the Nazis. Ha ha! Isn't that funny? Well, guess what? Maybe because you're racist, that's why the university is, going against you.
Yeah. Maybe because you don't treat your students as equals? That you like, go out of your way to discriminate against people based on their race and gender? But she believes she's doing it in a good cause. I mean, you look at the history of the progressive stack. You can go back to Occupy Wall Street. They're actually doing this in that whatever stupid little park they set up their tent city in. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually said it to where, like, if you're a trans, disabled, black woman of color or whatever, like, you get to speak before anyone else. And, like, it just became, like, this oppression Olympics, and she considers it like a legitimate pedagogical like thing because like she was taught it. Like I've obviously been in pedagogical classes before, and I've had my teachers like pitch the same social justice garbage to me. Mm-hmm. And like I've had my teachers put letters on the screen of students that are actually teaching that actually took their class, and they're saying that they're implementing these social justice things in their schools now. So, the impact of how we teach the art of teaching, which is pedagogy, is pretty bad how we do it. And it's pretty unjust and messed up, but, that's how it is. That's reality that we live in.
And that's the reality that we're trying to change. Because otherwise, reality is gone.
Yeah, why can't we treat people as equals? It's a little insane. Let's go to the break. We'll have a short little, song we'll play here, and we'll come back and we'll do international news. We just got a couple stories, so we'll be done pretty soon. Hey, welcome back from the break. We're going to get into international news, and we're going to start off with the Middle East. We got some really, really good news out of there. You want to get into it, Bobby?
Yeah, this is probably the best story that has come out of the Middle East in
months.
Years. So, ISIS has been completely driven out of their Syrian capital of Raqqa by U.S.-backed forces. So, yeah, this is probably the biggest victory that has happened in the fight against ISIS.
ISIS is almost entirely defeated.
Almost, yeah. They said that really the only thing that's left after the 5-month battle to retake that city is just militia fighters that are still in like pocket holdouts here and there across Syria. So, not talking about ISIS in Iraq, but ISIS in Syria at least. This is the biggest victory we have had against them in, like I said, in years now.
And a couple of days ago, we were watching videos of Raqqa.
Mm-hmm.
We watched some drone videos of what it looks like now, and everything's destroyed. And we also watched some videos back in like 2013 of what it looked like under ISIS control, and it actually was like a pretty vibrant place. Obviously, it was like a very oppressive society to live into. But yeah, the entire city.
They still had a functioning society back then, at least.
There's like no way anyone could ever live in that city again. It's gone.
And if you look at some of the pictures of the city right now, it looks like Dresden after the Dresden bombings in Germany in World War II.
Yeah, the fire bombings.
It literally looks like that. And they said that the problem is there are still people living in that city. There are still some ISIS fighters that are holdouts in that city. Problem is, after they've driven those guys out, they still don't know how many hundreds of different IEDs and booby traps are scattered amongst the roads. You try driving a truck down some street avoiding debris, all of a sudden, boom, it blows up a week later after all the ISIS fighters have already left because they planted a bomb there. So, the battle for Raqqa has lasted over 4 months now. They said that they haven't even had any coalition airstrikes on Raqqa since Monday. And that's like the first time in a long time they've gone that long without having any coalition airstrikes. So, yeah, that's pretty much, fantastic news. They said they said the forces have been backed into a strip of the Euphrates Valley and its surrounding desert. That's pretty much all that's left of ISIS in Syria now. So
that's pretty cool.
The war against ISIS is winding down. We're making amazing regards, especially the last, 4 or 5 months here. And I'd like to say this, ISIS is almost a thing of the past. But we got to keep it up and finish the job. Problem is, they still exist in the Philippines. They still exist in Europe. They still exist all over the place. So just because
they have their terror cells.
Just because the main fighting is done in their quote-unquote territory doesn't mean it's done everywhere. And so it's a long fight to go.
A lot in Africa, too.
Yeah. It's still a long fight to go, but this is the one that's like the epicenter and the center of all of it. So
yeah, the caliphate is crumbling.
Yep.
Let's go into some European news. I got the first thing out of here, and that is we got some new statistics out of Germany. 1 in 7 Germans 32 and younger are Muslim, and of that population, 80% are on welfare. So Germany's population is declining. The replacement rate, I believe, among ethnic Germans is 1.2, 1.3. You need 2.1 to sustain yourself. So it's really bad. It causes your population to age. You're having more grandparents than there is new children. And that gets into a problem when they have pensions. Who's going to pay for these pensions if you don't have people to work the jobs to pay taxes? Which is why they've brought in so many refugees from the Middle East and Africa. And that number is now 7.89. But as we just said, 80% of those individuals are on welfare. So estimates that refugees are already costing around, this is a crazy number, $1.241 trillion. And that number is only looking to grow, especially since Germany is now paying refugees to leave. And, Germany has an extremely robust welfare system. So, this is unsustainable. And this is all off the backs of the German taxpayer. And Germany, has one of the better economies in the world. But this is unsustainable, and it'll, in the end, destroy the country. I can't imagine where this country is going to be in a decade or two. And, they believe, you let in... Because I've talked to libertarians that don't think this is any problem. Because, all these new refugees and migrants, they're going to help the GDP. Yeah, of course the GDP would grow up. You have more people in the country. That doesn't mean your prosperity is growing up. That's what you need to measure this stuff by. So, some really, really bad stuff out of Germany. That place is really crazy now.
And the problem is, it's almost at the point where it's irreversible.
Yeah.
You know, you give this another 2 or 3 years, if they don't change it, it will be irreversible. So yeah, it's really sad what's happened out there. But
let's get into the next thing though, and this is in regards to the situation out in Spain, and in terms of the Catalonian independence movement. So this week, the Prime Minister of Spain, Mariano Rajoy, announced that on Saturday that he would remove the separatist government of the independent-minded region of Catalonia and initiate a process of direct rule from Madrid. The announcement, made after an emergency cabinet meeting, was an unexpectedly forceful attempt to stop a year-long drive for secession in Catalonia, which staged a highly controversial independence referendum on October 1st, even after it was declared illegal by the Spanish government and courts. They're also looking to remove the autonomy from the region, which is the first time they've ever done that. And this is the first time they've ever had any sort of like civil conflict since they, became a democracy after the death of Franco in 1975. So some really crazy stuff happening out of there. I don't know where this is going, but maybe civil war. I don't know.
it looks like that's where it's going. I mean, we saw the skirmishes when they tried to hold that referendum, and those weren't exactly peaceful. Now imagine if you have like full occupation of Spanish forces into Catalonia. Yeah, those people are going to start an insurgency if that continues. And I hate to say it, but it's probably going to happen if that's the case.
Yeah. So they're actually looking towards the possibility of organizing them an election somewhere down the line. But as of now, they have no idea when they're doing that. And that's not a solid thing. So I guess we have to move forward on the assumption that Catalonia won't gain independence. They're going to have to be directly under the control of Spain, and they're going to crack down on this for the foreseeable future.
And, you know, if you think about it, if you're a Catalonian person who wants to be independent from Spain, you're already slightly autonomous, but you want full autonomy. Now you're going to get even more Spanish control over you.
Yeah.
That's only going to make you more radicalized to want to fight back against them. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a Spanish civil war in the next couple of years.
Which is crazy to think about. Let's get into the last story out of Europe, and that is Macron is saying, as of a statement he delivered this week, that France is going to deport all criminal undocumented migrants.
Good.
French President Emmanuel Macron has vowed to follow through on the radical immigration reform promises prior to his election, with all undocumented migrants convicted of crime to be deported. He said the following: "We're taking care of France where things aren't going well. I'm doing what I said I would do during the campaign." Now, there's a lot of people that are pretty mad about this because, France is generally more left-wing than most places. And a lot of people feel like he's only doing this trying to appeal to the, a far-right voter base, like the National Front, since Macron... Like the National Front, we talked about the French election so many months ago now. It was one of our earliest episodes, like episode 9, I think, was the election. Something like 70% of French voters think that the National Front is a threat to democracy, which is why, France, even people on the right, people that supported Fillon, they ended up voting for Macron, even though he's like a center or left guy. But now he's enacting some immigration reforms that actually appeals to them. So his approval rating is dropping considerably. It's in the 40s now. So they're doing good stuff there. I mean, limited to criminal migrants, I would like you to do more, obviously. But it's a step in the right direction, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything negative about this exact policy of his. It's a good thing. Obviously, like we said, we'd like it to go farther, but it's a step in the right direction. I believe in baby steps. So that's completely good news. So I hope he actually follows through with it, too.
Yeah. The last region that we're going to go into for international news is out of Asia. And the first thing that I want to talk about is North Korea. There was a defector, Ri Jong-ho, a former senior North Korean economic official who, escaped the country and has come to the United States. And he says that potentially the North Korean economy will collapse in the next year as long as UN sanctions continue to be tough on the regime. Quote, I don't know if North Korea will survive a year under sanctions. Many people will die. So, you know how things have been going. There's been a lot of escalation, and China has even been cracking down on how things are going. And they don't really appreciate that they have to, be sending food into as aid North Korea, as opposed to actually having some sort of economical benefit through trade. As we've said months ago now, China passed an agreement to where they're going to be trading for American coal as opposed to North Korean coal, which is the biggest export of North Korea. So, the regime is potentially going to be collapsing very soon. And the sanctions are pendant on them disarming their missile programs. And if they do that, they're promised, hey, we're going to send you some sort of economic benefits. But the regime doesn't seem like they want to do that at all. So we might see this country collapse, as he said, in the next year. And, like you said, also, a lot of people are going to die. Economic sanctions target, civilians. They're kind of inhumane in that sense. But if this country collapses, you're going to see all these refugees go into China. And as we've reported before in the program, the Chinese army has put troops on the border so refugees don't come in. So South Koreans aren't probably going to be taking these people at all. So, a lot of people are probably going to be dying pretty soon. Terrible, terrible stuff.
I mean, you have to look at it from a, not even an economic standpoint, but just from a cost-benefit analysis. It's either that or full-scale war.
Yeah.
In which, from the international community standpoint, which do you want to have happen? Either way, North Korea gets the short end of the stick.
This regime was always destined to collapse very, very messily.
And a lot of people are going to die, but what's the alternative?
No idea.
There is none.
Unless they disarm, but they have no intention to do that from what we've seen.
And if anything, you can say it would be him killing his own people. He had the opportunity to disarm, and we would help them. He chose not to, and a lot of his people are going to die. And it's sad, but that's what's going to happen. And, so it is better than war. I'll tell you that.
So we're going to close out today's episode with the last story out of Asia, and that is out of the Philippines. Whenever we have a good Duterte story, we always close with it.
I love Duterte.
Yeah, he's pretty great. Duterte this week said that he'll execute criminals himself. President Rodrigo Duterte threatened to kill drug dealers himself on Friday in an effort to stop his war on crime. Quote, those who rape children, who rape women, those sons of, he didn't say bitches, but obviously it's implied. Mm-hmm. If you don't want the police, I'm here now. I will shoot them. That's true. If nobody would dare it, I will pull the trigger. These comments follow an October 11th announcement to pull cops from his war on drugs due to their alleged killing of thousands of people. He has since created the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, comprising of 2,000 agents compared to the police force's 165,000-man operation. So, he goes on to say of the police, okay, let us see 6 months from now. If things get worse again, I will say to these apes, go back to this job. You solve this problem of ours. So,
God, I love Duterte.
Pretty based, pretty funny stuff. He's willing to kill them himself, and
he said he was almost willing to kill his son if his son was a drug dealer.
Yeah, he said he would be willing to do that.
His son's name is Pulong, and he said, so I told Pulong, my order is to kill you if you are caught, and I will protect the police who kill you if that's true.
He's killed people personally. He was a hitman in his past. He says he's thrown people out of helicopters.
Nice.
So, he's very, very popular in the Philippines. They call him the Donald Trump of Asia, but he says even crazier stuff. You know, Donald Trump says I could shoot people on whatever...
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, Fifth Avenue, and people wouldn't be mad. Duterte is saying, I'm going to execute drug criminals personally.
You know what? If I ever get the chance to meet Duterte, I'm going to give him the biggest handshake I possibly can. Be like, hey, man, I love you so much.
Yeah, he's pretty great. But yeah, with that said, that's the show this week. I thought it was a pretty good show this week.
Pretty good show.
I had fun, and we're under 3 hours, which is always good. So yeah, I don't have any other news to report. So thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Republic Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.